a vote that they were too frail and helpless to achieve on their own. Having long watched women struggle to stand up for their right to choose elected officials, the strong and capable men decided to intercede and aid their weak female counterparts. And on June 6, 1972, David Bowie's release of his concept album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust, kick-started the glam rock genre and led to such spin-off trends as glam medicine, glam sports, and glamcatecture, all culminating in the 1976 presidential glam election. And that was what happened this week in history. In the words of French King John II, history will forever remember the great names of Alexander and Napoleon and Washington. But what about me, John II of France? I did stuff too.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to take control of the airwaves. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight is Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And, man, it's been a good week for cryptocurrency. I can't help but notice. I expected this. First of all, I have to say I was wrong. I expected cryptocurrency. I expected Bitcoin in particular to hit 100,000. I think I said last week by the weekend. And of course, that did not happen.
It's gotten pretty close.
Yeah, it hit like 92, 93,000, something like that. And I keep telling people the same thing that I've always told them, and that is to buy cryptocurrency. And it's so frustrating hearing the same things over and over. And that is, oh, I wish I had bought it X number of years ago. Because I've been hearing that for such a long time. And I know that 2 years from now, they're going to be saying, for a fact, they're going to be saying, I wish I had bought it back in 2024. But there's nothing stopping you from buying cryptocurrency today, right now. It's never been easier to acquire cryptocurrency. Install Crypto.com onto your phone. Install Coinbase onto your phone, or Kraken. I think I would recommend Crypto.com at this time above all of the others. But you can use Coinbase. You can use Crypto.com. None of these are like great places to get cryptocurrency, to be fair.
It's easier now to get crypto than it was in the past?
It's easier than ever.
Really?
Yeah. You can't.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You can't get. I do. As one of the people
before
as someone who went to prison,
KYC stuff, it was way easier.
Well,
to get
as
crypto.
someone who went to prison for selling Bitcoin, it's easier now than ever to get Bitcoin.
Huh.
You do have to submit your ID, no doubt, and that sucks. But it's still, back in the day, like 10 years ago, the only real avenue that you had to do this was Coinbase. And they sucked, and they jumped through a lot of hoops. They forced you to jump through a lot of hoops, and they regularly denied people's accounts for reasons that would never be explained. They seem to not do that anymore and just approve anyone's accounts, as well as having competition from Crypto.com, Kraken, Binance.us, and several others. It's harder now to buy cryptocurrency in a way that isn't immediately monitored and red flagged by the IRS and by the federal government in general. In fact, it's almost impossible to do that. The on-ramps into cryptocurrency that allowed for privacy and secure and safe transactions have been closed. Not all of them. There's still some on the dark net. There's like Agora Market.
I don't even think all the ones on the ClearNet have been closed.
No, I think Agora Market is still on the ClearNet.
BitOff doesn't have KYC.
Okay.
And you can get crypto through that. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm not super familiar with all the different means of acquiring crypto, to be honest, because, it's easier to get it person to person, if you ask me, at least in New Hampshire. But
well,
I
at
am
least
aware
in
at least
Keene,
of some.
New Hampshire. It's not even the whole state of New Hampshire where it's this easy.
Well, at least within libertarian circles.
Sure. But that's a very insular circle.
Yes, but that's the circle I'm in. So.
Sure, fair enough. But if you're not in libertarian circles and you're not in Keene, New Hampshire, You may be curious how to acquire cryptocurrency. And this isn't an ad. This isn't a live read. This is just general advice. It's not financial advice. But I would highly recommend, as a human being, to install Coinbase or Kraken or Crypto.com. I would recommend Crypto.com because they provide you with a debit card that allows you to much more easily actually spend your cryptocurrency, which is invaluable because you're going to run into a time in your life where you need to make a purchase and maybe you're broke or whatever. And Coinbase is going to make you take 3 to 5 days to sell whatever cryptocurrency you have there and turn it into dollars. Crypto.com will provide you with a debit card that you can actually use for that purpose. It also has a bunch of little features like missions, and it kind of gamifies the concept of buying cryptocurrency, and it gives you stuff for doing so, typically other cryptocurrencies, and they're usually worthless, right? If you buy some Corgi AI, which is worth not even 10 thousandths of a penny each, but if you buy it, they will just give you 1,200 of them. And that's how worthless they are, that they will just happily give you 1,200 of them. But still, that's a nice little feature that other cryptocurrency exchanges don't have. Like Coinbase is not in the business of giving away a cryptocurrency, and they're never going to give away cryptocurrency. In fact, I recently bought some Dogecoin on Coinbase, and I did this at the very beginning of the month. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I'm still waiting to be able to transfer that Dogecoin off of Coinbase. And that is tremendously frustrating. They've got my money. Why won't they allow me to transfer this currency into a wallet that I actually control?
This is gonna be a crazy question. Are there faucets? Does anybody have any faucets for crypto? Like, do those still exist? Because they did a decade ago.
They did. And you could earn trace amounts of cryptocurrency using them. I don't know of any that still exist. I've been mostly, while I was on pretrial release for selling crypto from March 16th of 2021 until my release from prison in May of this year, I was pretty unplugged from the entire crypto world. And even now, I'm very cautious about how I acquire and sell Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general for obvious reasons, right? A friend of mine, a coworker, who I'm saving money for him because he can't save it himself. He would just spend it, and he wants to buy a gaming computer. So periodically, he just gives me $50, and I just take it home and put it in a safe for him and just hold on to it. Because if he had access to it at a savings account, he would just withdraw it and spend it. And I will tell him no until he has the money that he needs to buy what he wants to buy. He has trouble saving money, so he's using me in order to do that. Anyway, it's just US dollars. I don't know what you're trying to mouth, but you might as well say it on the air. Anyway.
Well, it probably sounds like a bad idea to me.
Why? It's just holding money for a friend.
You're the one who went to prison for 6 months or 11 months over it. I don't know. Just seems like a bad idea.
It seems like a normal, ordinary thing to do. If a friend of yours has trouble saving money and they're like, hey, will you hold this money for me so I don't spend it? That is in no way illegal or shady or questionable,
Chris. What the government
Chris
would say is that you're operating a bank as a bank by holding other people's money. Now, I understand it's only one person.
They would absolutely not say that.
government.
And that's when you get into the territory of like libertarian conspiracies that just don't make any sense.
Yes. The problem is they've already gone after you once.
I don't offer him withdrawals. I don't do any of that. It's a very simple matter. I don't even know why I spent this long explaining this. This is crazy.
All right.
There's nothing questionable or shady or suspicious about that.
Look, anyway, I'm not saying it's shady or questionable so much as what the government would try to argue.
Well, look, man, if the government wants to try to put me in prison again because I'm saving $100 for a friend because he can't save it for himself, then that's fine.
$100 a week, you said something like that, right, didn't you?
I haven't said anything about how much of his total money I have. In fact, it's only $50 at this point.
It probably doesn't even matter anyway.
It doesn't matter. This whole thing is nonsense because there's nothing illegal about that. It's a very common thing among circles where people
See, this is the problem. We can
paycheck.
argue it's not illegal all we want, but that doesn't mean that they won't argue the opposite.
Well, selling Bitcoin we knew existed in a legal gray area, but saving money for a friend does not. Like, people do that all the time. If you have a roommate who struggles to make their rent each month, you're gonna be like, hey, give me $150 each month, and then at the end of the month, I'll just have that $900 for you, or $600 rather it would be, and I'll pay your rent for you, right? That's normal. That's not operating as a bank. And it's silly
If
to
it's
suggest
paying-
otherwise.
If it's like paying off their rent that they
it doesn't
owe
matter
you,
what the purpose
that
of the
wouldn't be
money
a problem,
is. You're
I don't
holding
think,
it for
but-
them and you're returning it to them.
Yeah, and that's where the problem probably comes in.
That's crazy, Chris. That is an absolutely
Look,
unhinged response.
I agree. It's crazy, but this
No,
is...
you're being crazy.
The government, literally, I've
Dude,
read...
you have created
in
this
the
idea of
past-
the government in your
the
head as
past,
this evil monolithic
the government
entity.
has gone after people for holding other people's money. Okay? Now, it may have only been 6 people, but they have gone after people for it.
Are you talking about the
That very
Crypto
thing.
6?
No, before cryptocurrency existed.
Okay.
They've gone after people for holding other people's money. Literally, that's all...
They may have gone. I'm not discussing this any further. This is absolutely unhinged.
All right.
Anyway, the whole point of this is to say this friend did ask me to take this $50 of his that I have and use it to purchase cryptocurrency for him. He wanted me to buy some of these penny cryptocurrencies. Obviously, I said no. I said I won't do that, but what I will do is show you how to acquire cryptocurrency for yourself. But that's the craziness of some of these people. They act like it's some monumental, tedious challenge to install an app, connect your bank account to it, and buy some crypto.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you don't need me to show you how to do this. You live in 2024. You have a phone. You're on Instagram. You know how to use this technology. Install this app and buy some Bitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever cryptocurrency you want to buy. Most of them are going to tank in value. Most of them are not going to do very well. And that's just the sad reality of the situation. A lot of them seem to also want a sure bet, right? They want to buy Bitcoin, but they only want to buy it if they know it's going to increase in value. And I don't know how to really convey this to them because there's never going to be a sure thing. It's always, maybe Bitcoin could collapse to zero tomorrow. It's not very likely, and in fact, it's almost impossible, but it could happen. There's no guarantees here. It could drop to $10,000. We don't know what's going to happen. And the people who are holding out, like, well, if I had known back when it was $5,000 that it was going to jump to $91,000, yeah, I would have bought some. Well, you're never going to know what it's going to do.
That Russia could nuke the U.S. tomorrow, or North Korea could nuke the U.S. tomorrow.
Sure.
That doesn't mean it's likely.
It's not, but we don't know. Bitcoin isn't necessarily likely to go up. It's been several years down from its previous high marks.
It's been pretty stable.
It has, and I tend to think that it's going to continue climbing, but none of those are sure things.
Nope.
And it's a gamble, it's a risk, it's a bet. But if you're sitting around waiting to know with absolute certainty that Bitcoin is going to hit $200,000 or hit $1 million, it's not going to happen. If you're not buying Dogecoin, well, Dogecoin is probably never going to hit $1 per coin. It might, especially at this rate, especially with Elon Musk.
What's it at? I'm really curious.
I think it's at like 38 cents now, which is
Wow,
crazy.
That's crazy. Isn't that like what it was like back when it first got off the ground, basically?
No, it has reached this peak before, but it's always been worth like fractions of a penny. Like it was a
Okay.
meme coin. It was meant to be worthless.
I thought around the time that Elon Musk started promoting it, it was about the time where it was like in that 30-cent range.
It did hit this, like I said, it
Okay.
did hit this range previously, but it was
and
never.
then it fell again after that. Okay.
It fell back to
Okay.
normal, but it's never been $1 per coin. But it probably will be at some point in
But
the
it
near
shouldn't
future.
be. It doesn't
shouldn't
make
be.
any sense. It's decreasing in value. It's designed to. It's literally designed to lose value.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, that's not any more true than it is to say that any cryptocurrency is designed to lose value. It's just that there's so very many Dogecoin that the demand for them has to be just completely insane for it to reach the value that it's reached.
Yeah.
Because instead of having a market cap of 21 trillion, I don't know what the market cap of Dogecoin is, but it's probably quintillions or hextillions or whatever it would be. Many factors larger in market cap than Bitcoin, which just means there's a whole lot more Dogecoin out there, which means that each individual one is going to be worth a whole lot less. Anyway, Elon Musk is now, and I can't believe I'm saying this, becoming part of the federal government. Donald Trump is creating a new governmental agency, which is never good, right? We don't need a new government agency, but Donald Trump is creating one. and it's called the Department of Government Efficiency.
If it disbands the rest of the agencies, I'm all
Maybe,
for it.
but I don't. It might do that. It's not impossible to fathom, and that's what I'm really intrigued by what the next 4 years is going to hold. But back to Doge right now, because for those who are astute, Department of Government Efficiency is an acronym for Doge, which is a meme and a cryptocurrency that Elon Musk absolutely loves. Elon Musk, the dude who owns Twitter and who is apparently on good terms with Donald Trump, and who apparently is going to be part of the Trump administration and heading up this new government agency, is a huge fan of the Dogecoin cryptocurrency. And that, more than anything, is why I suggest that Dogecoin is a good investment. Now, 3 weeks ago, you could take $100 and you would probably get like 1,000 or 10,000 Dogecoins. I think it would probably be about 10,000. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head because I haven't looked at the history to see what it was 3 weeks ago. But the point is, it has multiplied tremendously in value. And if you bought Dogecoin a month ago, then you're looking pretty good right now. But there's no guarantees in cryptocurrency, and we don't have the foresight to have bought it a month ago. You could buy it now, and maybe it will go up, but if you want something to multiply by a factor of 20x or 30x or 40x, some of these people are hoping to be able to put $100 into something and walk away as millionaires. And yes, that is possible, right? That happened with a lot of people in the early days of Bitcoin. It's happened with a lot of people with Dogecoin, Ethereum, all of these things that have just multiplied by hundreds of thousands of percents in value since their creation. The odds of that happening, though, are very, very, very low. Your better bet to really secure financial freedom and stability is to bet on a safer thing that you are almost certain will increase in value. Yeah, you can take a few dollars and throw it in Polkadot or whatever random cryptocurrency you happen to find. You can certainly do that, and I would suggest you probably should. Take 20 or 30 of these tiny little cryptocurrencies that are fractions of a penny each and buy some of them. Maybe one of them will explode in value. Maybe they'll all tank and die. Doesn't matter. You're only putting a few dollars into it. But the best thing to do is to buy a cryptocurrency that has stood the test of time and that may not increase 200% or 300% or 400,000% in value, but 1% to 5% in value. Something safe and stable, I would recommend something like Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Dash, Ethereum, one of these long-standing, historically sound cryptocurrencies that will actually be there tomorrow and that could tank to zero, but is overwhelmingly unlikely to do so. Monero, also a really good one, but Monero is more difficult to acquire. You're going to have to jump through some hoops.
Probably going to have to convert it, but
yes.
I don't know if it's so much difficult to acquire. I mean, once you've got basically any other crypto that's common, like
yes, but you can buy all of those cryptos on these exchanges. You can buy them all on Binance or Crypto.com or
but
Coinbase.
I mean, once you get it off into an actual
but
wallet,
you're skipping over these steps that people have to take. If they want to buy Bitcoin, they can just install this app, go on there, and buy it.
Yeah.
If they want to get Monero,
I don't know.
They have to install another app, which is a wallet that they actually control.
Right. So to me,
buy the Bitcoin, transfer the Bitcoin to that wallet, and then not transfer it, and then what's the word I'm looking for? Change it, I guess, into Monero, and that's like 4 extra steps.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, like buying crypto on an exchange isn't really buying crypto. I mean, until you have it in your own wallet, it's just an IOU for crypto.
But it's still.
It might be connected to crypto in terms of price, but as soon as the company goes under or an FTX thing happens or a Mt. Gox thing, collapse happens,
well, you should certainly move your crypto off of the exchanges
quote, unquote,
as soon as possible. Right. Certainly. But I'm not going to say that it's not truly crypto just because you have to go through the step of moving it off the exchange.
I mean, yeah,
it's absolutely still crypto.
I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical of saying
it's just not a.
I mean, it's
just not a wallet that you control.
The whole core concept of crypto and Bitcoin is it's decentralized and you control it, and you don't really control it when it's on somebody else's server. So I don't know.
Well, that's not the ideal way to do it, certainly, but to suggest it's not an encrypted currency because Coinbase is custodying your coins for you is simply inaccurate. It's still Bitcoin, whether you're holding it or whether Coinbase is on.
They may not have as much crypto as they claim, right? Like it's just a number in a database as far as, what they're showing you isn't necessarily what they actually have in terms of crypto. So,
well, in regard to almost all cryptocurrencies, we can easily look on the blockchain and see whether or not they have the amount of cryptocurrency that they claim to have.
Right.
Because all of this information is publicly available.
Once it's in crypto, but when it's still within the exchange, you can't see any of that.
Yes, you can. Because you can see what wallet address your Bitcoin is being held in, and you can go to a blockchain explorer and see and verify that that Bitcoin is actually in there. These audits happen quite regularly, and it's because blockchain is publicly available information. You can pull up Coinbase's wallet. You can Google it right now and find out what Coinbase's holding wallet is for Bitcoin, and you can check to see whether or not they have the amount of Bitcoin they're supposed to have. It's easy to do. It's a quick.
Okay.
I mean, you could Google it right now.
All
you don't have to make that face. You could just Google it.
I'm gonna have to just take your word for it because that was not the impression I had. And
Monero
that's some of the
is
issues that we had with FTX.
Monero is the only one where that isn't possible, and that's because you can't simply look on a blockchain explorer to see how much Monero is in a wallet.
Right.
One of the things that FTX was doing was that they were loaning money to other companies, and they weren't being audited. People weren't checking to see if those institutions actually
I thought it was,
had.
You weren't able to audit them because it was just a number in their database.
How would it be impossible to audit them? Blockchain technology is publicly available. It's like all you have to do is go to a blockchain explorer.
Yeah. Okay, so I see what you're saying. So we knew what wallets they
People just weren't doing it. Unfortunately, they were trusting them, and it backfired.
Yeah, okay, I'm following what you're saying now because you're saying that as soon as you withdraw crypto from your wallet, it's coming from their wallet. So
yeah,
and if that wallet has enough, okay.
And usually these companies will make publicly available they don't keep all of their cryptocurrency in live wallets. Some of them are in hardware wallets and things like that. But they'll usually provide those addresses as well. I think Coinbase does.
Well, this is kind of why I was saying where it's just a number in a database as opposed to because you can't really see all of what they've got.
Well, you can. You just have to look at multiple wallet addresses.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I'm following you.
Even if they've moved 90% of their cryptocurrency into a hard wallet that isn't online, you can still look at that address and see how much Bitcoin is actually in there.
Right. Assuming they haven't obscured it in some way, at least. Right.
Well, it's not possible. If you go to a blockchain explorer and you type in the wallet address, you're going to see how much cryptocurrency is in that wallet.
You say it's not possible, but. I mean, if
they would have to obscure the blockchain from view, Chris, and that's simply not possible.
Right, but if they were to, so for example, you have something like Tether, right? I mean, they could have taken crypto, converted it to dollars, bought something else, held that, and then bought crypto again, and you don't necessarily know it's their wallet. So, like, the wallet that you're withdrawing from has less crypto in it than the amount of crypto they actually have.
Well, that's going to be the case because they do have offline hardware wallets that they store the bulk of their cryptocurrency in.
But didn't you just say we know what those wallets are? So
yes,
even if they're offline, you can still see them. So
yeah. And that's always going to be the case with all cryptocurrency wallets, except some of the privacy coins like Monero and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of Monero enthusiasts have been arguing that these cryptocurrency exchanges should undergo an audit to make sure they actually have the Monero that they're supposed to have. But you can't get it through Coinbase or Kraken or Gemini or any of those other exchanges. Actually, I take that back. You can get it through Kraken, I think. But otherwise, you have to buy some cryptocurrency, put it into a wallet that you control, convert it into Monero. And there's a few extra steps there, a few extra fees, but I would highly recommend it because Monero is one of the better cryptocurrencies out there. Anyway, what else is going on with the Trump administration? Because there's some weird stuff going on, and I want to talk about it.
Americans across the nation made their voices heard this week as they demanded more mind-blowing guitar solos. Calling for the solos to be, quote, face-meltingly cool and go on for well over 10 minutes, Americans stressed that all guitar solos from now on should be equally as kick-ass as those in Van Halen's Hot for Teacher and AC/DC's Thunderstruck, or even better.
It should start out really slow, and then get faster and faster until they're all the way up at the top of the guitar neck and bending the notes like crazy. So it's like, and then there's all this awesome pyrotechnic stuff going off in the background. They should all be like that.
And in this week's local news, a report noted that on its surface, Glenbrook, Ohio is a small town like any other, a peaceful, all-American town. And yet, the report's authors added, if you only look closer, what you find may surprise you. In other news, a man is just having one of those decades where he doesn't feel like doing anything.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Moscow has warned the United States that allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles to strike Russian territory will prompt a radical change in the conflict. It comes after reports the Biden administration is finally granting Kyiv's request to use US-made missiles to hit much deeper into Russia. Nick Harper reports.
The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
A show of support from outgoing US President Joe Biden. With just 2 months left in office, he's looking to surge military assistance ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House. Trump has vowed to end funding and the war itself. The Kremlin says the missile decision throws oil on the fire, escalates the conflict, and means Washington is now directly involved. Without confirming the policy change on long-range missiles, US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller pushed back at Monday's briefing.
When you look at escalation of this conflict, it has been Russia that has escalated the conflict time and time again. It's the aggressor here.
The change of policy comes as Moscow deploys tens of thousands of troops, including North Korean soldiers, to try and retake Kursk, the Russian region Ukraine captured in a surprise offensive this summer. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
A New York man is in custody following a fatal stabbing spree across Manhattan on Monday, which left 2 people dead and 1 injured. It's reported the attacks were unprovoked, but the attacker has been arrested multiple times before. Mitch McCann reports.
Police say at around 8:30 local time, a 51-year-old man stabbed a 36-year-old construction worker in the abdomen on West 19th Street. The man was rushed to Bellevue Hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after. 2 hours later, the attacker continued on and stabbed a 68-year-old Asian man on East 30th Street who was fishing by the East River. He too was rushed to hospital but did not survive. 30 minutes later, the assailant attacked a woman on 42nd Street and 1st Avenue near the United Nations headquarters. Police arrested the alleged attacker near the UN shortly after and say he is a resident of Bellevue Men's Shelter, and they added he has 8 prior arrests.
The US state of Texas's Education Board is voting on Monday on a controversial new public school curriculum that's infused with Bible stories and which critics say glosses over slavery in the US. Tony Waterman has more.
Supporters of the state-developed curriculum say the Bible stories have historical context and will teach students about morality. But critics say singling out one religion violates the separation of church and state and implies one religion is better than others. They also argue the text doesn't properly address slavery and racism. The lessons would be taught in kindergarten through 5th grade. Schools wouldn't be required to use the material, but if they did, they would receive a big boost in funding. Tony Waterman, Texas.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you want to weigh in, join the discussion, talk about whatever is important to you. Again, the number is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Arya.
And Mr. Penguin.
And I have a small favor to ask of you out there. And you don't have to do it, but it would be appreciated. I want you to go to freeiannow.org. That's freeiannow.org. Click sign the petition. And sign the petition there. It's located at change.org. You can also find it there, I suppose. But the easiest way to find it is to go to freeiannow.org. And at the moment, it doesn't have a whole lot of signatures. It's something like 150, something to that effect. And we want to ramp that number. Of course, we haven't been heavily promoting it as much as we should have. But we've been working on other stuff in the background. For example, I was on a call today with a person who I'm going to keep nameless because I didn't discuss with them whether or not they wanted their involvement in this to be made public yet. But I had a extensive 30-ish minute phone call with this person about the possibility of getting this clemency request in front of President-elect Donald Trump. And that's a real, you smirk, but this is a realistic possibility.
No, I'm not smirking, I'm smiling.
Yeah, this person that I spoke to has to some extent the ability to put this in front of Donald Trump, as well as clemency or pardon requests for Roger Ver. Now, of course, we are holding out hope that Donald Trump is going to commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence, quote, on day one, as he takes office in January. But we have about 2 months now to get the ball rolling at freeiannow.org, because if we present this to Donald Trump and it's only got 200 or 300 signatures on it, he's probably not going to care, sadly. But if we can present him with 2,000 or 3,000 or more signatures, that carries significantly more weight with him. So please go there, freeiannow.org, sign the petition. This is actually happening. This is something that is moving forward. Your signature could actually matter. And I know what you're thinking. I've signed dozens of online petitions at change.org, and they've never achieved a single thing. This petition in and of itself is also not going to achieve a single thing. Yes, online petitions are stupid. Yes, signing them at change.org does nothing. However, these signatures, when combined with this clemency request that this person is capable of and intending to put in front of Donald Trump, will have an effect. So please check it out. That's freeiannow.org. That is freeiannow.org. Ian is, of course, serving an 8-year sentence in federal prison for the crime, that's air quotes for those not watching the video feed, or in case the videos are currently showing Chris, the crime of selling Bitcoin without a license. Now, there is no license for selling Bitcoin. No such license exists. That didn't stop Ian from going to prison for selling Bitcoin without this non-existent license. So freeiannow.org. You can also go to freethecrypto6.com if you want to learn more about Ian and myself and 4 others who were arrested primarily for selling Bitcoin. Well, the others were arrested not for selling Bitcoin directly. It's murky and it's confusing, and that's why there's so much background information about it. But check it out, freeiannow.org. There's a lot of information there that can fill you in if you're curious on what's happening. But sign the petition, whether you agree with Ian Freeman or not, whether you support what he's done, whether you support his activism, whether you're still angry about the stuff he has said about the age of consent or whatever, sign the petition anyway, because none of that warrants an 8-year sentence in federal prison. Put that pettiness aside. This man is in prison, federal prison, for selling Bitcoin. That's an injustice. You can help alleviate that by going to freeiannow.org and signing the petition. So let's go to the phones. We do have Kadu on the line from Connecticut. Kadu, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind tonight?
I think I may have accidentally signed that twice. Whoops. But anyway...
Well, thank you for signing it at least once. Hopefully there are controls in place that will prevent people from signing it twice. But please, people out there, just sign it once. But, you know, accidents do happen.
It probably is. So I was going to say, I have not done very well in crypto. I made some stupid mistakes. In fact, in 2016, I lost a decent chunk of change on this website called Cryptsy.com trading site by foolishly leaving my coins on there. And then the creator ran off to Japan or something, and also I didn't get in the lawsuit on time where you could get something back. I'm not sure I would have even had the required proof to show that I had the coins on there. But what I was going to ask is, I do still have a remaining handful of Litecoins that I bought, ages ago, and I feel like people don't speak too highly about Litecoin and the price movements over the years. Yeah, there's been pops up, but in general, it hasn't done all that much. Recently, it took another pop up. So I just wanted to know whether you both thought it could possibly be a little bit underrated just due to, being one of the original coins and the fact that it's shown some longevity, and also that people do actually use it for purchases. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll speak on this if you don't mind. So ultimately, I think if you look at the value of your Litecoin, you might be surprised. because often the cryptos, especially stuff like Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash and probably Dash and Monero, they often go upward. They're still going in an upward direction, even if they've got down. So it may be worth more than what you bought it for or acquired it at. So I would definitely double check on that.
I mean, that's not impossible, but over the last 5 years, and I think this is what Kadu is alluding to, is that Litecoin has hovered pretty consistently between the $40 to $90 mark. It did spike at one point to almost $300, but it then fell back to about the $50 to $80 range, and it seems to consistently over the last 5 years stay around there, whereas Bitcoin has certainly not done that over the last 5 years.
Okay.
I'm up like $50 on a $350 purchase from ages ago. So it's not that impressive, even obviously compared to even just if you're in an S&P ETF. But I was just thinking, anticipating for the future, is it possible there could be a surprise?
I mean, it's always possible. I always understood that Litecoin was like a test network for Bitcoin, and that all features that were being implemented into Bitcoin were first implemented into Litecoin. And that was what I was under the impression of like 5 or 6 years ago when I first moved to New Hampshire, and I found when I went to some of the stores that accept cryptocurrency and asked them if they took Litecoin, I got almost no's from everyone. I think I got one yes, and that was from the owner of Route 101 Goods, or it was then Route 101 Goods. Now it's the Mighty Moose Mart. No one else seemed to have any interest in Litecoin whatsoever. Bitcoin, for those who are looking for perspective, over the last 5 years is up 1,137%. 5 years ago, Bitcoin was valued at $7,300. As of today, it's $90,000. Whereas Litecoin, which I have to pull it up again, is currently at $88. And 5 years ago, it was at $48.21. So the movement for Litecoin, which is an 84% difference for those who are curious, the movement of Litecoin is definitely more controlled and definitely more stable. I wouldn't expect any surprises out of Litecoin. To me, just looking at the last 5 years, it seems very consistent. Looking at it going all the way back to the last 7 years, going back to October 28th of 2017, it was still hovering around the $53 mark. And again, this isn't financial advice. I'm not a financial expert. I can't predict the future. But the last 7 years of history, other than these three large spikes where it spiked up beyond $200 or so, it's consistently been $40 to $90 in value. And just looking at this, I would suspect that's what it's going to continue to do.
Yeah, that could be true. It seems like on some of the internet purchases I made in the past, though, when they were accepting a handful of cryptos on the website, I bought things with Litecoin in the past, and it was one of the options that were offered. I guess maybe because the transaction speeds are fairly fast.
Well, when I mentioned that, I meant only the physical locations here in Keene. Obviously, online, you have access to, what is the main processing vendor online? I can't think of them right now.
BitPay?
BitPay, yes. And BitPay takes Litecoin and a variety of cryptocurrencies.
Is Litecoin one of the ones that take?
Yeah.
Okay.
But here in Keene, at the time, there were a lot of stores that accepted cryptocurrency, but they only accepted like 3 or 4 wallets, and they had to go into the AnyPay app that they were using and specifically choose to accept that cryptocurrency as payment. And Litecoin was one of the ones that like no one else around here was trying to use, so no one had turned it on.
Yeah, there's different systems out there, and the ones, there's only a handful of cryptocurrencies that are pretty widely accepted. Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash are two. Monero is pretty high on the list of acceptance, except not like anywhere near, I think, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And mostly a lot of this is because there are, as Aria was saying, there are different systems out there, and some of them do, and some do support Giving Coin and others don't. So like BitPay, supports Bitcoin Cash, but it doesn't support Monero. Whereas BitInstant IO, I believe, supports Monero and probably Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. I'm trying to think but it probably doesn't support Dogecoin maybe, but I think BitPay does. I could be wrong about that one, but
I got to be honest with you. Thank you so much for the call tonight, Kadu. I appreciate it. And I wish I could predict the future, to be honest with you. I've always wished that I could. And your question intrigues me.
This is probably the only place that won't try and predict the future, because if you go online and search YouTube for like Bitcoin, they're all trying to predict the future.
Yeah. But your question was, do you expect any surprises? And I think that's a fascinating thing. And a friend of mine, the one who I was talking with recently, last week I gave him a ride home from work, and he asked me a bunch of questions about cryptocurrency. And again, I made the same suggestion, buy it now. Anyway, he asked me essentially the same thing. Well, what are the upcoming surprises? What should I expect? Like, dude, I don't know. If I knew, it wouldn't be a surprise, and everyone would be anticipating it, so the result would be negligible. If everyone knew that Bitcoin was going to hit $100,000 by the end of November, everyone would be buying Bitcoin, which would leave way less for you to actually buy. It would also drive up the value of Bitcoin and become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But all of that aside, no one knows what is going to happen. Again, if we knew that Bitcoin was going to collapse to $1,000 at the end of the month, everyone would immediately go out there and sell their Bitcoin, which would again become a self-fulfilling prophecy and collapse the value down to $1,000. So it wouldn't even be a surprise at that point. But like, the nature of a surprise is that we don't see it coming. I don't know what's going to happen. I was surprised by the presidential results in last Tuesday or the Tuesday before last, whenever it was, the election results. They surprised me. I was surprised to see Donald Trump is creating this new government agency. I didn't know the president could create a new government agency. That's probably kind of alarming when it's all said and done, that the president can just go, you know what, we need a new government agency. And this one apparently is going to audit other government agencies and determine whether or not they are being run efficiently. Spoiler, the answer is no. No government agency is being run efficiently because they don't have to be. They have unlimited budgets for all intents and purposes. You don't need efficiency when you have infinite amounts of money.
Yeah, whether it's a security or economic efficiencies, if you look at these, there are ratings for like certain agencies, like I think like the DoD or whatever, and it's like just as an example, and like if you look, it's like FFFF, DFF.
Fun fact, and I don't know if this is true, but one of the things that inmates in federal prison, which I got out of in May of this year, liked saying was that there's this list, a ranking of all 432 government agencies, bureaucracies, and they're graded in efficiency and how well they're run and all of these things.
Is this by a private agency or a private organization?
Dude, it was inmates.com talking to inmates. So like, I have no idea. They weren't able to cite their sources while we were standing in the lunch line in federal prison.
Sure.
But they consistently said that the Bureau of Prisons is always the worst, always at the very bottom of the list. And I totally get why. The Bureau of Prisons, the institution responsible for organizing the thousands, by the way, that's thousands of federal prisons throughout the United States. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, they are tasked. It is the DMV, for all intents and purposes. It's the Department of Motor Vehicles at a federal level that is also responsible for keeping people alive. And it's exactly as bad as you would expect. Nothing about it is efficient. Nothing about it is good. Everything about it is bad and inefficient. And I don't know what I expect from Elon Musk. He has said in the past that he wants to audit the Fed. And very recently, within the last few weeks, some senator or representative or something tweeted about auditing the Fed, whereupon Elon Musk retweeted it and wrote 100. For those who don't know, 100 is like saying, I agree with this. Like, this is absolutely right. That's what it means when you just say 100 and you retweet something. So Elon Musk did that. Maybe Elon Musk wants to go in as this Doge agency and audit the Federal Reserve. That would be astounding. In its 111 years-ish of history, the Federal Reserve has never been audited. This is one of the things that Senator Rand Paul and his amazing father Ron Paul talked about quite a lot. We needed to audit the Fed. I don't know, because I'm not an economic expert. I don't know what auditing the Fed is supposed to tell us. Like, I don't know what information they're supposed to get from that. But they want to do it, and people like Ron Paul and Rand Paul, who know a lot more about it than I do, suggest it should be a good idea. So I'm on board with it. I trust Ron Paul. If he thinks we should audit the Fed, then we should audit the Fed. Ron Paul also thinks that we should end the Fed.
I was going to say, can't we just shut it down? Like, do we even need to audit it?
I prefer the idea of ending the Fed, and I suspect Elon Musk values the same idea because he does seem to be a Dogecoin advocate, which means that he's an advocate, whether he means to be or not, of cryptocurrency and decentralized currencies. For one reason or another, even if he doesn't really understand the reasons, Elon Musk supports the notion of taking the ability to create money away from the government and putting it in the hands of everyone. And I don't know if Musk knows that he agrees with that when he tweets about Dogecoin, but he does, because that's one of the key features of cryptocurrencies is that they are not created by the government. They are not controlled by a government, and they cannot be inflated or created by a government. So maybe Elon Musk and Donald Trump want to go in there and make a CDBC. That's a central bank digital currency. I think I said the acronym backwards. Maybe that's their plan. And they think that the Fed needs to be audited and come up with its own, quote, cryptocurrency. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but it's going to be interesting, man. I never expected Elon Musk, who, look, man, I hate Elon Musk. He is a welfare whore. All of his money has been earned through the government. Now, not all of it. Like Tesla sells some vehicles now. They do. But for the longest, the way Tesla made their money was by selling these things called carbon offsets to other automobile manufacturers. Now, when environmentalists and climate change and all of that was being talked about, the federal government created this regulation saying your cars cannot emit more than this amount of carbon. Or you can buy those carbon offsets from another automobile company. So Elon Musk or Tesla created this idea or created this notion. And King of the Hill actually did an episode about this exact concept where instead of actually doing anything to help the environment, you just say, okay, we're not selling any cars. You are, but we're going to pool our numbers together, and that's going to lower the total number of carbon being put out there because we're not actually releasing any cars. The whole thing is very confusing and very stupid, but all you need to know really is that the government made a law that basically allowed other auto manufacturers to give Elon Musk money, and that was somehow greener, and that helped the environment. That's the bulk of it. That's all there is to it. And that was how Elon Musk made his money because of this government regulation. The carbon offsets weren't the only way that he did this, but he is a known welfare whore. He gets his money from the federal government. And he then, from what we can tell, he runs businesses mostly into the ground while getting credit for somehow creating them. I don't see anything in him that seems like a particularly good business person. He seems to have thoroughly destroyed Twitter. People are again fleeing Twitter in large numbers. The last I heard, Twitter could not sell advertising because no one wanted to advertise there. It's a dead platform at this point, as far as I can tell. And, that's what I probably would have expected. That's what a lot of people expected.
It's interesting that people will buy his cars, but they won't use his platform.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how many people are really buying his cars. And if they are buying them, I suspect it's because, one, it's the Apple equivalent of automobiles. It's a fashion statement.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
More than it is an automobile. And it's a prestige. It's an elite club that you're part of to drive a Tesla. And just like it used to be an elite club to have an Apple device, like you were cool, you were a big deal, right? So it's a fashion statement. And all in all, or it's because you're this crazy kook about the environment and you think that Tesla is somehow saving the world. I don't know. Elon Musk, though, I never expected him or wanted him to be in government. But he's going to be. And I don't know how to feel about that. A lot of people who I didn't expect to end up in government are going to be in government as a result of Donald Trump. And this is surprising because Donald Trump initially ran under the promise that he was going to drain the swamp. And he's not draining the swamp, but some of the stuff he's doing, I don't know. It does kind of look like he might be building a dam in the swamp, maybe, or just doing some minor stuff to disrupt it as much as possible.
Rearranging chairs, maybe?
I think it's a little more than rearranging chairs. Like the Health Services Department, whatever it's called, the Department of Health Services. I don't know what it's called, and I don't have it in front of me, and I'm trying to pull it up now, but an ad block, not an ad block. I feel like
what he may be doing is a different group of people are like basically going to capture the government's federal funds that the government hands out, right?
Well, certainly.
So
because they're corporatists, they're fascists.
Right. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, Elon Musk was already capturing a lot of those funds. Or, well, I mean, I don't want to say a lot, but I mean, he was capturing a lot. But yeah, I mean.
It doesn't stop with Elon Musk, though. Like,
right, exactly.
Donald Trump has selected Robert F. Kennedy to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. That was the department I was looking for, and I had to take a minute to pull it up at archive.ph. So Robert Kennedy, vaccine skeptic, and guy who ran for president, and
the guy who wasn't going to get elected.
Outside the system kind of guy,
right,
is going to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. And that is a fundamental shift.
It's definitely an interesting shift.
Now, one of the things he wants to do, and I can't imagine how anyone objects to this, is he wants to look at the employees of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and look for conflicts of interests between employees and pharmaceutical companies. He wants to look at this employee and say, hey, you worked for Pfizer for 12 years, and then you came to work for the FDA, and you started approving all of Pfizer's drugs, you're fired. Or, hey, you Pfizer executive, you've been working at Pfizer for 5 years, but before that, you spent 8 years working at the FDA where you approved Pfizer's drugs. The FDA and Pfizer and these pharmaceutical companies, we know they are corrupt. If you look back through any pre-COVID news articles about the pharmaceutical industry or the FDA, it was obvious that they were corrupt. Pharmaceutical executives were openly paying FDA employees and FDA heads to approve their drugs or to rush them through the approval process or whatever. And this was known. Then COVID-19 happened, and everyone was like, yay, Big Pharma is saving us. No, they're still corrupt. They're still evil. And Robert Kennedy, to my surprise, is heading up the organization that could go in there and knock some heads around. It might be an interesting 4 years. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power, but there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Moscow has warned the United States that allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles to strike Russian territory will prompt a radical change in the conflict. It comes after reports the Biden administration is finally granting Kyiv's request to use US-made missiles to hit much deeper into Russia. Nick Harper reports.
The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
A show of support from outgoing US President Joe Biden. With just 2 months left in office, he's looking to surge military assistance ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House. Trump has vowed to end funding and the war itself. The Kremlin says the missile decision throws oil on the fire, escalates the conflict, and means Washington is now directly involved. Without confirming the policy change on long-range missiles, US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller pushed back at Monday's briefing.
When you look at escalation of this conflict, it has been Russia that has escalated the conflict time and time again. It's the aggressor here.
The change of policy comes as Moscow deploys tens of thousands of troops, including North Korean soldiers, to try and retake Kursk, the Russian region Ukraine captured in a surprise offensive this summer. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
A New York man is in custody following a fatal stabbing spree across Manhattan on Monday, which left 2 people dead and 1 injured. It's reported the attacks were unprovoked, but the attacker has been arrested multiple times before. Mitch McCann reports.
Police say at around 8:30 local time, a 51-year-old man stabbed a 36-year-old construction worker in the abdomen on West 19th Street. The man was rushed to Bellevue Hospital but was pronounced dead shortly after. 2 hours later, the attacker continued on and stabbed a 68-year-old Asian man on East 30th Street who was fishing by the East River. He too was rushed to hospital but did not survive. 30 minutes later, the assailant attacked a woman on 42nd Street and 1st Avenue near the United Nations headquarters. Police arrested the alleged attacker near the UN shortly after, and they added he has 8 prior arrests.
The US State of Texas's Education Board is voting on Monday on a controversial new public school curriculum that's infused with Bible stories and which critics say glosses over slavery in the US. Tony Waterman has more.
Supporters of the state-developed curriculum say the Bible stories have historical context and will teach students about morality. But critics say singling out one religion violates the separation of church and state and implies one religion is better than others. They also argue the text doesn't properly address slavery and racism. The lessons would be taught in kindergarten through 5th grade. Schools wouldn't be required to use the material, but if they did, they would receive a big boost in funding. Tony Waterman, Texas.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at a brutal weekend in Ukraine after Russia launched its strongest attack for months, targeting energy infrastructure and causing power cuts in various parts of the country. President Biden has authorized Ukraine for the first time to use US-supplied missiles to strike Russian territory.
We're on a knife edge here, waiting to see what exactly President-elect Trump plans to do in Ukraine.
Lee Turner is a former UK ambassador to Ukraine, struck by President Zelensky's claim this weekend that with Donald Trump at the White House, the war will end sooner.
I think what he's talking about really is ending the war in 2025 rather than it dragging on into 2026 or beyond. It's all about Ukraine retaining agency and influence. Kiev is really worried that Trump wants to pressure Ukraine by cutting off arms supplies to accept a so-called peace deal, which would effectively mean Russia holding on to those parts of Ukraine it's already grabbed. Any deal that lets Russia keep the land it's already invaded and occupied would mean Russia winning this war.
US officials say President Biden's decision to allow Kyiv to use American weaponry without restrictions was also designed as reprisals for Moscow's decision to deploy North Korean troops on Ukrainian soil. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. Moscow says a move by US President Biden to allow Ukraine to use its long-range missiles deep into Russian territory is a radical change. A man is in custody in New York after stabbing to death 2 people in random attacks in Manhattan on Monday, and Texas is due to vote on a controversial public school curriculum that focuses on Bible studies and critics say glosses over slavery. And that is the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reporting.
It's the Onion Radio News. Hager physicists have created quantum slacks. This is Doyle Redland reporting. The stunning announcement that a team of Hager physicists has successfully developed quantum slacks was made this morning at a press conference in Philadelphia. According to Dr. Daniel Chang, head of the Hager team, conventional notions about the physical properties and possibilities of slacks have been turned on their heads.
We are on the verge of unzipping the secrets of creation and peering into the pants of God himself. It appears the very fabric of the universe may well be a smart cotton twill weave.
However, Chang urged caution in further research after tests conducted last month at the Hager Pants Propulsion Collider Laboratory in Dallas suggested the possible existence of so-called anti-pants, which could, in theory, initiate a chain reaction resulting in no pants at all. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you want to join the airwaves, talk about whatever is important to you. You got that number, 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And this hour of the show, is brought to you by Edge. That is a wallet, a cryptocurrency wallet, holds a variety of cryptocurrencies. I'm not even sure how many it supports, but as we were talking about previously, it's very important for you to not keep your cryptocurrency on an exchange. Take ownership of your crypto. It's unique in that ability. Once you have your crypto, no one can take it away from you. However, it does run the risk that you can lose access to your account. There was some proprietary wallet that released recently, and it's not a proprietary, it's a crypto-specific wallet, I guess is the word I was looking for. And I don't remember what it was called, but it forced users to log out when they updated to the latest version of the wallet. And in order to reset the wallet, they had to use their actual backup keys, their backup phrases. And at least one user was complaining because they lost millions of dollars.
Ouch.
Because they didn't back up their keys, because their wallet inexplicably logged them out.
How do you end up with millions of dollars worth of crypto and not have backup keys?
That's a really good question. But, back up your keys, obviously. But you don't necessarily have to do that with Edge.app. You should, because if Edge, God forbid, ever goes out of business, then you will need your recovery keys or your recovery phrases in order to retrieve your funds. But all you need is a username and password to sign into your Edge wallet. If it signs you out, no big deal. Just sign back in with the username and password. And that's one of the key benefits of the Edge app. And I absolutely love it. I've been using the Edge wallet for probably 10 years now. I don't know exactly how long, but it's a long-standing wallet. And it was one of the first to support FIO addresses, which allows people to send me cryptocurrency at Aria, at Edge. It's a tremendously valuable wallet, and I would highly recommend it for anyone out there. And you don't have to worry, because if it signs you out with an update, all you have to do is sign back in. Just know your username and password. But you should also back up your phrases, and you can get those from the Edge wallet. So you should definitely do that. But that's how you should store your cryptocurrency. Not like if you're holding hundreds of Bitcoin, don't keep it in a wallet on your phone. But if you're just holding a little bit of cryptocurrency, keep it in a wallet that you control on your phone.
Edge is a good wallet for people who actually use crypto, not people who are just saving it or, storing it basically. It's definitely it's way better than Jax, by the way, if anybody's ever used Jax. Just Jax was awful.
Jax, JAXX.io. I don't even know if that still exists.
They were a prior sponsor of the show, actually. But
were they? It was a good wallet back in the day.
They could never make it work.
So if you go to their website, Jax.io, no joke, it automatically forwards you to Edge.app.
Thank you, Jax. You did something right.
So thank you to the people at Edge for buying Jax.io, apparently. I'm assuming then that the Jax wallet simply no longer exists, or there is a JaxLiberty.io now, but I don't know if I would want to trust that, because Jax.io, that's JAXX.io, that was the original domain of the Jax wallet.
Yeah.
And now that goes to Edge.app. And Edge is a wallet that I would recommend you use, so just use that.
Yeah, I'll say I was using Edge Wallet long before there was a sponsorship. So, just to give you an idea, if I'm not a fan of a sponsor, I won't say anything about a sponsor. So,
well, the Edge Wallet has existed for a very long time, and I've been using it for a very long time.
Yeah.
And the sponsorship is extremely new. Like, we're still in the first month of that, maybe second.
There's things that you can criticize about Edge, but as far as
no software is perfect.
Yeah, just as an ordinary user, just like an average person using crypto, it's a pretty good wallet. It's not going to be the most secure wallet, but it's going to be a wallet that's easy to use. You can convert between cryptos easily, and so forth. It has support for Monero.
It does.
It's not the most private Monero implementation, but it is. It's
you can
better
hit
than
the
not
swap
using
crypto
Monero.
option right there in the Edge wallet. We were talking previously about how it can be a little more difficult to acquire Monero, but it's right there in the Edge wallet. Hit swap crypto, choose Monero, and there you go.
And this is what I was saying earlier about crypto doesn't have to be hard to use. It's just people don't really know where to go or how to get it, and you can make mistakes and you can go to the wrong place and end up being a nightmare, right? But
yeah, and that's exactly it. People act like using crypto or getting crypto is some monumentally difficult, complicated task. And it's not. All you have to do is install any of these apps that are tied to a crypto exchange, like Coinbase or Kraken. And I'm not the biggest fan of these cryptocurrency exchanges. They are the devil. However, they are useful for you to acquire cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Cash App necessarily, but I think that Cash App, I've been told, is an easy way to get crypto. And I think you can withdraw crypto to a real wallet once you've got it in Cash App now.
You can indeed.
That might be a way to go. But
to my knowledge, that is not true of PayPal's Bitcoin implementation.
I think that might have changed recently too.
They did say they had plans to allow people to withdraw their Bitcoin, but I don't know if that ever actually happened.
I've never seen. So unfortunately, I have a merchant account of some sort with PayPal, and so I don't see any of this stuff. So I can't go in and look for a crypto anything within the interface that I'm presented. But supposedly if you have a normal PayPal account, you can do that somehow.
I would recommend not getting Bitcoin through PayPal, though. If you must get it through one of these money transmitters, I think Cash App is probably the best of them, because Cash App has been doing it the longest.
Maybe.
And they make it the easiest. You do have to give Cash App your ID, but chances are you've already done that anyway.
Yeah, there might be some benefits to using PayPal over Cash App, in that
if you can withdraw it.
Right. Let's, for the moment, assuming we can withdraw it from both Cash App and from PayPal easily.
I know that you can from Cash App.
Assuming you can do it from both easily, it might be easier. Well, it might even be easier with PayPal, in that a lot of people probably already have a PayPal account. And the other thing is, the other thing that would be probably better about PayPal is you probably don't have to install an app to do it. Whereas Cash App, you actually have to install an app. I'm imagining anyway. I haven't done it on either, so I can't say for sure. But
well, if you've never done it on either, you might not want to give advice on which one is better than the other.
I'm not giving advice. I'm just giving an evaluation of the possible.
But you've never used either.
I haven't but
I don't understand then.
So because
why would you even weigh in on which one is better than the other if you've
I'm not
never used
in.
either?
I'm making some observations based
You're
on
expressing
what I
your
understand
opinion on which
the
one is better
situation
to
be.
use, despite having never used either of them.
Yes, but from what I've read and from what I understand, and I'm giving you the information you need to understand that you should look into it yourself as well.
Let's go to the phone, though. We have a longtime caller, Skeeter, on the line with us, unfortunately. Skeeter, you're on Free Talk Live.
I need some crypto advice.
We don't
what's
give
the
advice
best
here.
way to short? It's just technical. What's the best way to short Bitcoin? Because I plan on betting that it eventually dies from obsolescence.
When you say short, do you mean like the economic shorting this stock and shorting that stock and that kind of thing?
Yeah, betting against Bitcoin.
Yeah,
betting
I don't
on
know,
the
man.
price
Wait,
decline
wouldn't you
of
have to do
Bitcoin.
that like on the stock market? Like how would you do it?
I don't understand how shorts and all of that really work.
Well,
so
you're placing
I
a
don't
bet
know.
against it, and then you gain money if you basically if it goes down.
What's that?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess your
But,
best bet would be to buy USD if that's what you think is
what are
going
you guys?
to happen.
What are you guys going to do though?
Maybe.
What are you guys going to do when Bitcoin becomes obsolete?
What am I going to do when the sun fails to rise tomorrow? I don't know, man.
Bitcoin has already become obsolete in some sense. We have Monero, which is way better. But I still have Bitcoin
point.
and I still have Monero. So
You're presenting
No,
a
but,
hypothetical reality here, and
Yeah.
you're not giving any justification for me to buy into this. Like, what am I going to do when some magical, unlikely thing happens? I don't know, man. Like, what would I do if we turned out that unicorns were real? Right? I don't know.
The reason why it's going to go obsolete, just like Monero, is because of its privacy, the facets of privacy that it offers. But Satoshi Kun
Bitcoin doesn't
did
offer
stumble
privacy.
upon something.
do that.
It's pseudo-private, but the part that isn't private, the thing that does work, the thing that Satoshi Kun uncovered that does work is the public nature of the blockchain. That part of that's not private, right? That's the part that allows us to catch criminals like Ross Ulbricht, who pays in Bitcoin to hire
Yeah,
hitmen.
but see,
No, it's
as
true.
Chris was pointing out,
That's how we caught him.
Monero identified that as a problem and fixed it. And that's one of the reasons that I
How is
believe
that a
that
problem?
it's probably the same person who created both Bitcoin and Monero, because Monero is very clearly Bitcoin 2.0, and it fixes all of the problems that Bitcoin created.
So you're calling catching people who hire hitmen a problem?
Yeah, because the issue isn't with the hitman. The issue is with if you undermine the anonymity and privacy for the hitman, you also undermine it for everybody else, and everybody else is far more important than whether or not one bad person. This is like saying we should get rid of dollars or the U.S.
How does
economy
hiding
because
information-
there's some bad people out there who use dollars.
No, but how does hiding information make a system more efficient?
What does this even have to do with efficiency?
The reason why we need passwords is because of anonymity.
What?
That's another inefficiency that's caused by privacy.
Well, no.
Like,
First of all, that's
passwords.
not necessarily the case.
So
you're talking. There's a difference between
That is necessarily the
authentication and
case.
privacy, right? So privacy would protect you from, say, people seeing that you've done a transaction, but authentication is where you have the ability to send that transaction, authorize that.
I want to make sure I understand. You're saying that having to stop and enter a password, Skeeter, is inefficient?
No, he's saying it's privacy, but it's not.
No, I mean, he's saying it's inefficient, right?
They're inherently related. Yeah, it is inefficient. Like it would be easier
I'll give
if
you that.
everyone knew what you're doing.
Why do you think
so that we could
efficiency?
authenticate?
Why do you think efficiency?
If everyone knew what you're doing, you wouldn't
is
need to
king?
authenticate who is using
Answer the
a
question.
particular water
Why
at
do
any
you
particular
think
time.
efficiency is the only thing that matters?
Because evolution thinks that's the only thing that
Evolution
matters.
doesn't think anything. Evolution is a
that's what
process of natural selection
does.
where things adapt to their environment in order to excel.
How do you go through a selection process without reasoning? Tell me that.
Very easily, things either adapt to their environment and thrive, or they don't and they die. And if they thrive, then they
What
go
about
on to
that?
reproduce, and the characteristics that they have that they then give to their offspring go on to reproduce further. It's a very simple biological process that creates some amazingly complicated life forms. You should read
there's
a
a greater
book
process
on the subject,
Oh
Skeeter.
no, you should read a book. You should
Because
you
natural
should extend
selection,
that
I mean, you basically just said that natural selection or evolution requires some thinking, reasoning deity. That's essentially what you're arguing here. Is that your argument, Skeeter, that evolution can't be real because it requires, the hand of God to direct it?
I'm saying a selection process needs like at least an algorithm or reasoning.
Yeah, but algorithm doesn't have to be intelligent,
right?
We know what the algorithm is, though.
Yes, I do know.
And it doesn't value efficiency. And it doesn't value efficiency.
It does.
It values the ability of an organism.
Of
no, it doesn't. And I'm going to put you on hold again. What nature desires, what nature causes to thrive and to produce, what nature prefers is an organism that can adapt successfully to its environment. That's all there is to it. That's the algorithm. Nature prefers things that can adapt to the environment they live in. It's not efficiency. Nature doesn't give a damn about efficiency, dude. Look at the giraffe. The giraffe has the longest neck in the entire organism thing here on Earth, in the entire animal kingdom. And it has a nerve that connects from one side of its neck to the other side of its neck. And the efficient way for nature to do this would just be to cross those 3 inches across, right? Because that's how necks work. It's just from the left side of the neck to the right side of the neck. But nature doesn't care about efficiency, Skeeter, and you can look at the giraffe to prove this. The nerve, in fact, goes all the way up the neck to the head of the giraffe and then all the way back down on the other side. That's how it's connected. There's nothing efficient about that, and there never will be anything efficient about that. Nature doesn't care about efficiency. Organisms don't evolve by which one is more efficient and which one is less efficient. Efficiency never enters into the process. Nature does not care. Go ahead.
Let me recommend something. Let me recommend some books for you to read. You need to understand first the concept of stable strategy of evolutionary game theory. There's an optimization.
Did you hear anything I just said, Skeeter?
Yeah, I heard, and they don't apply because you don't really understand how evolution works, right? There's an optimization.
Why do you think that nature cares about efficiency?
Always occurring. Just because you see an inefficiency in a current status doesn't mean that thing is stable, right?
So you
don't know if that thing is going extinct or not.
So you think over a long enough time, nature, dude, I cannot do this. You think over a long enough period of time, nature prefers efficiency over inefficiency, but there are no data to support that. That's just a claim that you are making without any substantiating data to support it. You can make any kind of claim that you want, but there's nothing that we see in nature that suggests efficiency is valued over inefficiency. It doesn't seem to care. No processes that we see in nature. It's humans that care about efficiency. We're the ones who said, how can we modify the genes of this wheat to give us more wheat and less garbage? How can we make this crop? How can we make corn give us more corn and less stalk? How can we do this? How can we make cows give us more meat versus less meat? Humans are the ones who care about that, Skeeter. Nature doesn't. So humans have gone in and genetically modified things and bred things and altered the environment and the world that we live in and the organisms around us to make them more efficient, certainly, because we want bigger breasts in our chicken. We want more meat in our cows. But in and of itself, nature doesn't do that because nature doesn't care.
Yeah, I think Arya, you're right here. I think there might be some component of efficiency that you might be able to like say is sort of maybe a component. Like if you think about like viruses, for example, if a virus is too efficient, I'll put too efficient in quotes here, but it could burn itself out, for example. And
also
then it dies
a really
off.
good point. Yeah, if a virus is too efficient at like killing, for example.
it won't end up spreading to the rest of the world population. Like if you have a village, for example, and the village dies out, but it's so fast that it kills the villagers off before it can spread.
That's a good point too. Too much efficiency in nature could in fact be discouraged. But efficiency is almost inconsequential to the entire process of genetic evolution. It doesn't, to my knowledge, it doesn't factor in at all.
I don't know if the way to say it is it doesn't factor in at all, but it doesn't. It may or may not factor in. I think is kind of what it comes down to. It just depends.
Nature values what can reproduce and what can't reproduce, and the things that survive long enough to reproduce go on. But there's very little.
It's certainly not in some sort of intelligent thing that is. Yeah, that's.
And there is no selection process. There's no theory of evolution out there that is linking around in the garden saying this species is good, this one will survive, or whatever. There's nothing in nature that's particularly efficient either that I can think of.
Yeah, and you can also have like an animal, like a species, for example, like survive really well in one environment, but if you put it into a different environment with a different set of species, then it dies out because
it needs time to adapt to that environment.
Right, exactly.
Because it's not currently adapted to that environment, because adapting to the environment is the one thing that nature, which isn't an entity that actually cares about things, but the criteria that nature uses to select organisms, and I don't want to use the word select, the criteria that allows some organisms to survive and procreate versus others that don't survive and don't procreate appears to be the ability to adapt to the environment. Basically.
Adaptability, yeah.
It's definitely not efficiency. So read some books about biology and evolution, Skeeter. As controversial as he is, I think I would recommend Richard Dawkins, who in like the gene phenotype and some other book that I just started reading recently. I've actually got it in my car, but I don't remember. The Extended Phenotype was the name I was looking for. And the other book that I just started reading that I can't remember the name of, they go into this topic a fair bit. And see, Skeeter, that's one of the things that I do read. So when you call and you start talking about evolutionary theory and stuff like that, and I happen to be reading a book about natural selection by one of the foremost biologists on the planet today, and I disagree with you, you're going to need more than just a bald assertion. Like the giraffe is definitive proof that nature doesn't care about efficiency and that it wasn't designed to be efficient. And I don't like using the word design there because it has connotations of, intelligent design and a creator and all of that. But if it was to be efficient, if nature valued efficiency, it would have sought a different way to route that nerve instead of going all the way up and then all the way back down on the other side. There doesn't appear to be anything about efficiency in nature as a factor that we really need to care about. And even if it was, I don't particularly care. I don't value one economic system or another economic system or one way of living versus another way of living. I don't assess the utility of things based on how efficient they are. Like maybe the most efficient society you could have is the Nazi society, where all undesirables are purged and the trains always run on time and it's perfectly ordered, it's perfectly efficient. Maybe that's true. I don't care because it's not efficiency that I care about. I care about morality.
It definitely sounds like an argument that people who are pro-slavery would argue, and not even be correct.
Well, I suspect that slavery isn't a very efficient way of getting work out of people.
Well, that's what I mean. But somebody who is pro-slavery would argue, well, we need it for efficiency, and then it ends up not even being efficient.
But if you do care about efficiency, I would suggest that the last 400 or 500 years of history has shown us that freedom and allowing individuals to choose what is best for themselves and to live in a way that is best for themselves has shown itself to be the most efficient way to make progress that we have ever seen. Allowing people to pursue the things that they care about, allowing people to make themselves happy and to do the things that make themselves happy and to create the things they want to create and to be productive in a way they want to be productive, created the most powerful and the most economically successful nation in human history. And that was with limited amounts of freedom. You've never been free in American history to truly do what you wanted to do or be what you wanted to be. There's some ways where you're freer now. You're free to be trans now. You weren't free in 1810 to be trans, but you have more freedoms to express yourself now than you did in 1810. Regardless, well, you do because you have access to more avenues for that expression.
I think it depends on what you're expressing, probably.
Perhaps.
Still, but
regardless, it seems that freedom and human freedom leads to more economic productivity than less human freedom. And I think this is one of the points that the Austrian economists really were good at making. Although I can't reference any of their books off the top of my head because I haven't been reading those lately. I've been reading other things, but like Human Action by Mises would be a great place to start if you're curious about that.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Moscow has warned the United States that allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles to strike Russian territory will prompt a radical change in the conflict. It comes after reports the Biden administration is finally granting Kyiv's request to use US-made missiles to hit much deeper into Russia. Nick Harper reports.
The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
A show of support from outgoing US President Joe Biden. With just 2 months left in office, he's looking to surge military assistance ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House. Trump has vowed to end funding and the war itself. The Kremlin says the missile decision throws oil on the fire, escalates the conflict, and means Washington is now directly involved. Without confirming the policy change on long-range missiles, US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller pushed back at Monday's briefing.
When you look at escalation of this conflict, it has been Russia that has escalated the conflict time and time again. It's the aggressor here.
The change of policy comes as Moscow deploys tens of thousands of troops, including North Korean soldiers, to try and retake Kursk, the Russian region Ukraine captured in a surprise offensive this summer. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
A New York man is in custody following a fatal stabbing spree across Manhattan on Monday, which left 2 people dead and 1 injured. It's reported the attacks were unprovoked, but the attacker has been arrested multiple times before. Mitch McCann reports.
Police say at around 8:30 local time, a 51-year-old man stabbed a 36-year-old construction worker in the abdomen on West 19th Street. The man was rushed to Bellevue Hospital but was pronounced dead shortly after. 2 hours later, the attacker continued on and stabbed a 68-year-old Asian man on East 30th Street who was fishing by the East River. He too was rushed to hospital but did not survive. 30 minutes later, the assailant attacked a woman on 42nd Street and 1st Avenue near the United Nations headquarters. Police arrested the alleged attacker near the UN shortly after and say he is a resident of Bellevue Men's Shelter, and they added he has 8 prior arrests.
The US State of Texas's Education Board is voting on Monday on a controversial new public school curriculum that's infused with Bible stories and which critics say glosses over slavery in the US. Tony Waterman has more.
Supporters of the state-developed curriculum say the Bible stories have historical context and will teach students about morality. But critics say singling out one religion violates the separation of church and state and implies one religion is better than others. They also argue the text doesn't properly address slavery and racism. The lessons would be taught in kindergarten through 5th grade. Schools wouldn't be required to use the material, but if they did, they would receive a big boost in funding. Tony Waterman, Texas.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. Again, the number 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Franklin.
And quick, the world is coming to an end. What do? Obviously, there's only one thing to do. Panic. That's the solution. Just panic, keep panicking, don't stop panicking, and everything will be fine. Obviously, panicking doesn't work. But the latest episode of Free Talk Cast, which you can find at freetalkcast.com, is all about panicking, and it's a follow-up of last week's episode and people's inability to control their emotions. And it's all about the panic that people seem to be feeling since Donald Trump. as I say at the beginning of the podcast, it's not the average person. It's not even the average leftist. It's a very small set of people, some of whom aren't even leftists. Some of these people are like libertarians who are freaking out, panicking about the election and expecting the world to come to an end. So Nikki and I talked about that. You can find it at freetalkcast.com. That is freetalkcast.com. Because panicking, as I said at the end of the show, panicking isn't going to... no, what I said was the world isn't ending. Everyone relax. Stop panicking. And Nikki masterfully pointed out, and even if it is coming to an end, panicking about it isn't going to help. So we ended up naming that particular episode, Saving the World One Panic Attack at a Time, because that's the mentality that people seem to have. But realistically, Nikki's right. Even if we assume that the world is coming to an end, panicking about it isn't going to do any good. Freaking out about it on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram or Snapchat, it's not doing any good. Panicking isn't going to help anything or make anything better. So stop doing it. Gain control of yourselves, be an adult, and process things and move on with your life. That's the best thing you can do, and you can find out more about it. That episode goes on for about 30 minutes where we talk about these topics and things people can do to be productive and to express their emotions in a healthy way and to handle their fears and turn them into positive things. You can find that at freetalkcast.com. Again, that is freetalkcast.com. We actually, I began an ad campaign a few weeks ago as well that I'm interested to see what the results are, because let's face it, every libertarian out there has a podcast. And that's not necessarily true. It's not every single libertarian, but there's a lot of them. And when you go to PorcFest, you could probably throw a stone and hit a libertarian there. Don't throw stones at PorcFest, but you could, throw a paper airplane then. And chances are good you're going to hit someone who has a podcast. And there are some similarities among libertarians that are just basic facts worth noticing, right? Like, it's simply true that a lot of libertarians, perhaps even the vast majority of libertarians, I've never done a poll, I don't know the numbers, but it certainly seems to me as a libertarian that most libertarians are straight cis white dudes with beards who are middle-aged and generally overweight. And none of those things are bad, right? You're not a straight dude. I see you smirking over there. No, you're not straight.
Some of those are true, though. Overweight.
Well, I'm also overweight. A lot of people are overweight, especially as we get older.
Maybe not,
these things
too
happen.
obese, but
right.
a little bit, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being overweight. Again, I'm also 15 to 20 pounds overweight.
Yeah, slightly overweight people live longer.
Do they?
I believe that's the case, yeah. Not like super overweight, but a little bit overweight, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong, obviously, with being straight or being cis or being white. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. I'm not trying to suggest there are. I'm just saying when you have 5,000 podcasts from people who all share those characteristics, it starts seeming like an inside club, or it starts to seem like you're not going to fit in if you don't have those characteristics. And the same sort of thing feels true when you glance at photographs of PorcFest. You see a lot of white people, a lot of white dudes, a lot of cis people, a lot of straight people. And you can't easily identify those things from photographs, but as you dive in and you start meeting the people, you realize that it's overwhelmingly straight cis white people who tend toward libertarianism. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But there are a lot of people out there who aren't those things and who are libertarians. And they need a podcast too. They need a show to listen to as well. And I'm really happy that Free Talk Live, in so many ways, represents exactly that. Like right now, it's being done by a trans chick and a gay dude. And you have Bonnie, who is straight, right, and cis, but she's also a girl in her early 20s. Do you know how few libertarian women there are out there doing podcasts? There's not very many. And there's not very many like Lori who are out there doing podcasts. It's very, very rare. There aren't very many like Nikki who are out there doing podcasts.
We have a lot of women.
We do.
Relative to, on this show, doing not a podcast, but a radio show.
It's very
relative
disproportionate.
To, the libertarian community. It's interesting.
And we have more, I would say, more than the average LGBT representation among libertarians. Maybe not among the gays.
I don't know if we do, though.
But we have very few trans people in the liberty movement.
I thought the LGBTQ whatever has been disproportionately represented within libertarian circles. But certainly white men, is also disproportionately represented. Technical people are also disproportionately represented.
Yes. Libertarians do tend to be tech people.
But yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some, but there's also diversity in there too.
There is. There are some people of color within liberty circles.
Yep.
There's plenty of trans people. There's plenty of.
I bet we'd also have a slight, as far as people who are disabled, a slight.
There are some disabled libertarians that I know.
Than the average, as far as the general population would be concerned.
But those people need a podcast too, right? And I think that's one of the things that I want to promote in regard to Free Talk Cast is that, hey, if you're tired of listening to straight cis white dudes, straight middle-aged straight cis white dudes with beards talking about freedom, then maybe try out the Free Talk Cast, where you don't have any straight cis white dudes who are middle-aged with beards doing the show at all. And when Matt Roach, who's a longtime friend of mine, awesome dude, he visited me in prison, fantastic friend. When he heard that, he grinned. He was like, well, I guess I'm never going to be on it then. But no, Matt, you are absolutely welcome to be on Free Talk Cast anytime, right? We're not against straight cis white dudes with beards by any means, right? But there's a lot of podcasts out there, a lot of liberty podcasts out there, and it's simply a statement of fact that if you look at a average libertarian podcast, it's gonna be a straight cis white middle-aged dude with a beard. I guess I could remove the overweight part of that. Anyway, that's kind of the marketing angle I think I want to take with this. Hey, this is the same messaging, the same ideas, but brought to you in a slightly different way, allowing us to reach a different audience. Like some of these people, rightly or wrongly, they're just not going to listen to a straight cis white dude. And I hate saying that, but there's plenty of people out there who are like that. People who tend to be leftists, especially. If they look at a podcast and it's some straight cis white dude, they're just going to turn up like, oh, this guy can't possibly have anything valuable to say. And because of that, we're never going to reach them with the ideas of liberty. So let's send a different voice to reach them. And that's what Free Talk Cast does. And we talk about the ideas of liberty, peace, love. It's Free Talk Live, really, where we're primarily motivated by wanting people to live in harmony and peace and freedom and love, because our perspective, at least my perspective, and this has largely been Ian's perspective as well, and I suspect it's true of most of the hosts of Free Talk Live, is that liberty by itself is kind of useless. You need liberty and love if you want a beautiful, flourishing society. If you want freedom and peace and prosperity, then you need liberty combined with love. Otherwise, you just don't get the same beautiful, long-lasting result. And this is why we're hippie-ish here on Free Talk Live and always have been. We've advocated love and peace and understanding and forgiveness and accepting other people and treating them with respect and kindness instead of just, oh, no, it's all about economics and market theory. Yeah. No, it's about love and compassion for your fellow human beings.
Yeah, I don't know if I like the choice of the word love, but I definitely think the forgiveness aspect. And I certainly think that's entangled kind of within the love.
I tend to think so. But let's get back into the Trump stuff because it's crazy, man. He has picked Robert F. Kennedy to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. And there's going to be, issues with him being confirmed in the Senate and the House of Republicans. And I don't think that's really going to be an issue. I suspect Trump is going to get most of the confirmations that he wants. But this is strange to me that he even needs approval from Congress for his appointees in the first place, unless there's something called like a recess or something.
Isn't it always been that way that he needs approval, though?
It has always been that way.
The president needs approval?
Yeah, it has always been that way.
Or at least for a long time.
Well, yeah, fair enough. I don't know if it's always been that way, but it has been that way throughout my entire life, at least. But that's still weird to me, right? Like, that's the one thing that the president can do is appoint people to various offices. But he still needs approval for Congress. And I guess in the grand scheme of things, that's supposed to be
balance of power.
Yeah, but it rarely works out that way when there's so much partisanship, right? Like a lot of Republicans are just going to vote yes, and a lot of Democrats are just going to vote no. Robert Kennedy is probably going to get a lot of no votes, I suspect, from both sides of the aisles. Apparently, the Department of Health and Human Services is a $2 trillion federal agency responsible for administering health insurance programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act.
Oh.
Which, okay, but it's also responsible for approving drugs, medical devices, and vaccines, which makes me think that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, must be part of the Department of Health and Human Services. But I don't know that. And I'm looking up now, is the FDA part of the HHS?
I'm betting it's a separate agency. But
no, the FDA is part of the Department of Health and Human Services. Okay. So that sort of makes sense. I mean, a lot of these agencies are interwoven.
I feel like they'd have different one's more of a bureaucratic one and one's more like scientific. But I guess it's really it's not these agencies doing the scientific work anyway. They're just signing off on it. So,
well, I suspect that things like the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the FDA, and I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but all of these are different government agencies that belong to the Department of Health and Human Services in the same way that the Marines and the Navy and the Air Force all belong to the military.
Yeah.
And the Department of Health and Human Services is the overarching collection of all of those.
So I believe the way these drugs get approved generally is that the companies that produce the drugs are the ones who run through the trials, and then they submit the trials to the government agency for approval, something along those lines.
Right. So Kennedy, according to, I don't know where I'm looking at anymore. It's the Washington Post. I'm looking it up on archive.ph because the Washington Post was like, no, you can't read this. And I was like, bet I can't. And archive.ph allows us to read articles that are paywall blocked by the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, and all of these others. They say Kennedy has repeatedly made false claims about vaccines. He's likely to face a difficult Senate confirmation battle and so on. And I'm more curious about what he wants to do. He's one of the founders of the country's, quote, most prominent anti-vaccine groups. And I don't really know what that means. But he has repeatedly said that there is not enough data. This is an interesting sentence from whatever news article I'm reading. I've already forgotten the name of the organization. Kennedy, founder of one of the country's most prominent anti-vaccine groups, has repeatedly, and at times erroneously, argued there is not enough data on vaccines and their effects. Well, how can he argue erroneously that there's just not enough data?
I feel like this is a situation where he was talking about specific instances and not generally speaking. People have aligned, they'll align you with a anti-vaccine if you stand out and you point out problems with, say, COVID, the way they did the testing for COVID vaccine, right? So it's like, well, hold on, wait a minute. You may not be just against vaccines, period. You may, you might agree with the scientific basis for it, but the people who are actually anti-vaccine don't agree with the basis, the fundamental scientific basis for it. So those are two totally different instances. And if you just if you just accuse everybody of being anti-vaccine, it kind of loses its meaning.
Well, Kennedy very definitely is anti-vaccine, though. I think that's a fair assessment.
RFK we're talking about here? Is it anti-vaccine?
I think that's a fair assessment.
Is it? Because he seemed okay. So I haven't.
Well, he's repeatedly been out there saying vaccines cause autism and all sorts of other stuff like that. Whatever a person considers to be anti-vax, RFK is definitely that.
Okay.
Right. But I'm more curious by their statement that he's been wrong in saying there's not enough data on something. Like if you were to tell me like Skeeter earlier, who said, what did he say? That nature values efficiency. And I say, well, there's not enough data to support that. How can someone tell me I'm wrong, right? Because you haven't presented enough data to persuade me. I'm wrong about the amount of data that it takes to persuade me to accept a hypothesis. Is that the conclusion here? Like, if I don't believe that there's enough data on vaccines, how can I be wrong about that? Right? It's my personal belief where I've looked at the data and I said,
on
there's just not enough
or
of
on
it.
a specific
It doesn't
vaccine?
matter, right?
Like,
you can't say that someone is wrong for saying there's not enough data, right? A person either is convinced by the data they have or they're not. But you can't say, no, you're wrong. You should be convinced by the data. That's not the way these words work. That's not the way right and wrong or factually correct and factually incorrect work, or erroneously and non-erroneously work. If you are not persuaded by the data available, that's not a matter of being right or wrong. It's a matter of being persuaded or not being persuaded by the data. So that's just a really curious wording on their part to suggest that by not being persuaded by the data, RFK is somehow wrong.
Yeah. So I don't know a lot about what RFK has said, regarding vaccines, but I do know that he has said he's not getting rid of vaccines and something like that. And,
he did.
He said some other things about how, I think, was it COVID? He said people misunderstood what he said about COVID vaccines even. So I don't know. It's like, this is like one of these things where it's like, and I see at least a certain group, I'm not going to say the left necessarily, but probably the left, has seemed to like, have basically manipulated the truth frequently enough where it's like, it's hard to believe anything anymore.
Well, that's true on all sides.
Oh, yeah, the right does it too. I'm thinking on this particular issue.
Some public health experts say they are unlikely to trust any vaccine studies released by Kennedy, given that he has repeated the debunked claim that vaccines cause autism and made other misleading or false claims about vaccines. They don't link to anything other than him saying that the measles vaccine causes autism, apparently, which, like, autism is a complicated thing, and I recognize that the diagnostic criteria for autism has changed. So we widened it, and that allowed us to diagnose more and more people as autism. But when I look back to my childhood and the classrooms that I was in, and just the 150 students that I had in my same grade year, the rate of autism, or the rate of people who would qualify as autistic by any standard, was lower than it is now. There's no autism in my generation among me and my cousins and my siblings and stuff. None of us were autistic. But when I look at the next generation, like my sister's children or my cousin's children, the rate of people with autism, and like severe autism at that, seems to be almost 1 in 4. And that wasn't the case for my generation. And when I look around, I can see with my own eyes that there seem to be more children with autism now than there were when I was a kid. Sure, there were people who had autism and various disabilities when I was a kid, but they weren't nearly as common then. And it's not a matter of criteria or diagnostics. It's a matter of looking around and saying, this wasn't the way it was 20 years ago.
It's definitely the case that autism is not something that's diagnosed based on a test. It's based on a set of criteria that have changed.
Right.
I do have to wonder, though, if it's the fact that people were not labeling kids autistic back 20, 30 years ago, whereas now they are labeling it and it's like a badge of honor. And so like it becomes more prevalent that there's people who are autistic, in addition to the fact that the criteria has changed such that there's being more diagnoses of autism.
That certainly plays a role. And I see what you're saying. Like, the trans-trender thing, where like being trans kind of gets you social media bonus points in some circles. So a lot of people who aren't really trans start to transition because they want that social media clout or whatever. And we see the same thing on TikTok with mental illnesses, where it becomes cool to have anxiety, or Tourette's was a really popular one, where your favorite TikToker has this mental illness or whatever, and more people convince themselves that they have it. And as a result, it becomes not as a result, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it does become more prominent. More and more people do seem to exhibit signs of Tourette's as they consume TikTok videos of people who have Tourette's, for example. And there are studies showing exactly this, because it does become, as you point out, sort of a badge of honor. It gives them membership into this club that most people aren't in.
Yeah, there's some other observations I can make with autism. Like, I think there's a lot of people in the libertarian community who were never diagnosed with autism that definitely are on that part of the spectrum. But there's something else I think that's worth pointing out with autism. So, okay, so it used to be that autism is really only what you would call severe autism today. So it's something that you might be able to see. It's the kids who can't feed themselves, right? Like that's severe autism.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, that have autism don't have severe autism like that.
Right.
And that's what they used to call, I believe, Asperger's, I think is what they called it. But here's the other thing with autism. Okay. So there's everybody falls on the spectrum.
Sure.
Somewhere. So it's kind of
like gender, it is a spectrum from one side to the other.
Everybody falls on that spectrum. And a lot of it is just like, are you better at reading and writing, or are you better at math? And that's kind of how I think I would sort of explain this to somebody who really doesn't understand at all, like, what autism is. It's basically just the people who are better at math than they are at reading and writing, and social skills, that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's kind of weird because everybody, that's left of center is like going to be, you could sort of call autistic. Yeah. It's just this really weird thing, but they don't necessarily call everybody left of center autistic, but you could, in a sense, because, and then they just don't label anybody who's right of center because they don't have a name for it, but they could.
The curious thing to me, though, is this claim that vaccines cause autism. It was largely a result of this woman who wrote a book in the mid-90s, I think it was, widely debunked. The book has proven to be just pure and utter nonsense, and the claim just doesn't carry water. But I do think, just evaluating, like, 4 of my nieces and nephews are autistic, and at least 3 of those are severely autistic, to the point where, like, they're 9 or 10 years old and they can't speak still. And they probably never will. They communicate in other ways, and they're not stupid by any means, but they're autistic, right? And they're just different. And that wasn't the case in the previous generation. The number of people who exhibit these characteristics, whether we call those characteristics autism or not, the number of people with those characteristics, in my experience and based on my observations, seems to simply be increasing, and expanding the diagnostic criteria. Yes, but expanding the diagnostic criteria doesn't justify the increases that we're seeing.
Yes,
as far as I can tell.
There's something else that's worth pointing out. So what has led to probably an increase beyond just the expanding definition, right, is the fact that there is evidence to show that 2 autistic people who procreate are more likely to have an autistic child.
Right, because autism is largely, if not entirely, genetic. We've since learned.
Possibly, yeah. So that also, and it's easier with the internet to find other like-minded people today, which is why it's likely the case that we are seeing an increase in autism.
To plug the book again, Far From the Tree goes into a lot of detail about autism, and it's a fascinating book. Check it out, Far From the Tree by Andrew Solomon.
You can't win if you don't enter, and you actually can improve your chances of winning a prize drawing if you wrinkle up your entry blank. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com, and I speak from experience. Why this works: if they'll be spinning the drum before drawing, your entry blank will move around more than, and not adhere to, other perfectly flat entry blanks. And if they don't spin the drum and merely reach into a box full of other perfectly flat entry blanks, many of which are sticking together, yours will feel different to the person reaching in. When you win, act surprised. And if you're looking for work, this is a metaphor. For more tips on sticking out in a world where just too much blends into the blah, 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 hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Moscow has warned the United States that allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles to strike Russian territory will prompt a radical change in the conflict. It comes after reports the Biden administration is finally granting Kyiv's request to use US-made missiles to hit much deeper into Russia. Nick Harper reports.
The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
A show of support from outgoing US President Joe Biden. With just 2 months left in office, he's looking to surge military assistance ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House. Trump has vowed to end funding and the war itself. The Kremlin says the missile decision throws oil on the fire, escalates the conflict, and means Washington is now directly involved. Without confirming the policy change on long-range missiles, US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller pushed back at Monday's briefing.
When you look at escalation of this conflict, it has been Russia that has escalated the conflict time and time again. It's the aggressor here.
The change of policy comes as Moscow deploys tens of thousands of troops, including North Korean soldiers, to try and retake Kursk, the Russian region Ukraine captured in a surprise offensive this summer. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
A New York man is in custody following a fatal stabbing spree across Manhattan on Monday, which left 2 people dead and 1 injured. It's reported the attacks were unprovoked, but the attacker has been arrested multiple times before. Mitch McCann reports.
Police say at around 8:30 local time, a 51-year-old man stabbed a 36-year-old construction worker in the abdomen on West 19th Street. The man was rushed to Bellevue Hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after. 2 hours later, the attacker continued on and stabbed a 68-year-old Asian man on East 30th Street who was fishing by the East River. He too was rushed to hospital but did not survive. 30 minutes later, the assailant attacked a woman on 42nd Street and 1st Avenue near the United Nations headquarters. Police arrested the alleged attacker near the UN shortly after, and they added he has 8 prior arrests.
The US state of Texas's Education Board is voting on Monday on a controversial new public school curriculum that's infused with Bible stories and which critics say glosses over slavery in the US. Tony Waterman has more.
Supporters of the state-developed curriculum say the Bible stories have historical context and will teach students about morality. But critics say singling out one religion violates the separation of church and state and implies one religion is better than others. They also argue the text doesn't properly address slavery and racism. The lessons would be taught in kindergarten through 5th grade. Schools wouldn't be required to use the material, but if they did, they would receive a big boost in funding. Tony Waterman, Texas.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at a brutal weekend in Ukraine after Russia launched its strongest attack for months, targeting energy infrastructure and causing power cuts in various parts of the country. President Biden has authorized Ukraine for the first time to use US-supplied missiles to strike Russian territory.
We're on a knife edge here, waiting to see what exactly President-elect Trump plans to do in Ukraine.
Lee Turner is a former UK ambassador to Ukraine, struck by President Zelensky's claim this weekend that with Donald Trump at the White House, the war will end sooner.
I think what he's talking about really is ending the war in 2025 rather than it dragging on into 2026 or beyond. It's all about Ukraine retaining agency and influence. Kiev is really worried that Trump wants to pressure Ukraine by cutting off arms supplies to accept a so-called peace deal, which would effectively mean Russia holding on to those parts of Ukraine it's already grabbed. Any deal that lets Russia keep the land it's already invaded and occupied would mean Russia winning this war.
US officials say President Biden's decision to allow Kyiv to use American weaponry without restrictions was also designed as reprisals for Moscow's decision to deploy North Korean troops on Ukrainian soil. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. Moscow says a move by US President Biden to allow Ukraine to use its long-range missiles deep into Russian territory is a radical change. A man is in custody in New York after stabbing to death 2 people in random attacks in Manhattan on Monday, and Texas is due to vote on a controversial public school curriculum that focuses on Bible studies and critics say glosses over slavery. And that is the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reporting.
Right now, it's looking like tonight's record $500 million Powerball drawing could be cancelled, as embarrassed lottery officials have admitted they lost the balls. Douglas Bronstein, deputy director of the Multi-State Lottery Association, addressed the press moments ago. We have a quote. "We know how important the balls are to a successful drawing. I saw them the other day, and I'm sure they'll turn up somewhere." Bronstein says it's usually marketing director Ben Callahan's job to keep an eye on the balls, but when reached for comment, Callahan said he just sits next to the balls. It's not his job to know where they are every second of every day. According to Bronstein, it's crucial they find the balls before tonight's drawing. Quote, "We'd love to use different balls, but these ones have the numbers on them." Bronstein added that once they figure out where the balls are, they promise to keep them in some sort of case instead of just lying around the office. When we return, we'll meet some of the undeterred Powerball superfans who are camping out before the big drawing dressed as their favorite numbers.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Welcome back to the third hour of Free Talk Live, where you can join us 603-283-6160, because we do that. We open the airwaves to allow you to talk about whatever is important to you, whatever's on your mind, whatever topics you feel are worth discussing. 603-283-6160. This hour of the show, of course, is brought to you by Dash. That's short for digital cash. With fees of less than a penny per transaction, Dash is a cryptocurrency that is made for spending. It's one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets, including the Edge wallet. We want to say thank you to the Dash DAO, that's Decentralized Autonomous Organization, for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. So thank you so much to the people at the Dash DAO who have made the decision to sponsor the show. It is easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That is dash.org. And I should have specified previously when I talked about Edge that Edge, in fact, does sponsor the show. They actually pay us in Bitcoin, so I don't actually know the dollar amount. It's supposed to be roughly $1,500 per month. But because of the value of Bitcoin and so on, the amazing thing is that, like, they're paying us 1 month at a time instead of having paid for all months at the same time. And normally we like, I don't care about that. So it's just like, yeah, that's fine. You can pay us as each month goes by. But that really kind of sucks right now, because if they had paid us for like a year at a time, then, and I can't do the numbers off the top of my head, but let's say a year's worth of advertising at $1,500 a month at the time would have been 0.2 Bitcoin, right? But if you do that now, each month, as the Bitcoin value has climbed to $91,000, we're going to get substantially less Bitcoin this month for this advertisement.
So the contract was in dollars then, not in actual Bitcoin or Dash or whatever.
The actual contract was denominated in dollars but paid in cryptocurrency. And this was something one of the sponsors, not one of the sponsors, a commenter recently said on my TikTok channel, where each week I try to take a clip of the show and put it on there. Last week it was one of them, we talked about money briefly, and it was like a 3-minute clip or whatever. And the guy said, yeah, but I bet you want money to sit there talking about money or whatever. I was like, actually, we don't even accept money. I don't remember the last time Free Talk Live accepted USD as payment for advertising. And I had to walk that back a little bit because the last time we did it was actually with Porcupine Real Estate, which was within the last 2 or 3 years. I think it was probably about 3 years ago was the last time Porcupine Real Estate was a advertiser on the show, but we no longer even sell advertising. Now we have sponsorships. But regardless, Porcupine Real Estate would have been the last time that we accepted USD as payment for advertising or as payment for a sponsorship. And since then, it's been entirely cryptocurrency. Even before that, it was almost entirely cryptocurrency. And Porcupine Real Estate was someone that we just made an exception for because, it's Mark Warden. And we have a long-standing history with Mark Warden and Porcupine Real Estate. And I love Mark Warden. Mark Warden came to my sentencing. Like, these are people we know and love, right? So if they want to advertise on our show, we're going to, one, cut them a really good deal, and we'll accept whatever payment methods generally that they want to use.
Probably one of the only cryptocurrency friendly
yes
realtors out there too.
There is another now that is being run by Constance Spencer, who organized last year's Porcupine Freedom Festival. And I wish I could remember the name of the realtor that she works for, but I don't, sadly. But there are 2 now. So not only do we have a Liberty Real Estate representative company in the state of New Hampshire, we have 2. So that's how awesome New Hampshire is. We're also working on a dive team for libertarians in New Hampshire, a skydiving team in particular. And like, skydiving teams are relatively common-ish. It's various institutions and agencies have one, but we want to be able to say we have so many libertarians in New Hampshire that we have our own skydiving team. And not only that, we want multiple skydiving teams. At the moment, the team is just like me, Matt, and Max, and a few others that are mostly still in training, but that is the goal. We want to fly over PorcFest and drop out and do
that would be so cool,
and do a pro-liberty spectacle of some extent, and then land there at Rogers. So that's on the agenda. It's probably 2 or 3 years out.
That would be so cool.
Yeah,
landing
awesome.
right on the field. Yeah, that would be so awesome.
Yeah, and it's relatively easy to do. Skydiving, believe it or not, is not that difficult. I'm actually in the process of getting my skydiving license, which...
Wait, there's licenses for skydiving?
There is, but it's completely non-governmental.
Oh, voluntary. Interesting.
Yes. You do not have to have a skydiving license in order to go skydiving. However, if you show up at one of these places that offers to take you up in a plane and let you jump out of it and land on their property, they're going to want to know that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like if somebody showed up at my house and I had a plane and an airport, and I was like, and they said, I want you to take me up there so I can jump out. I'm like, okay. Well, are you a lunatic, or do you actually have some kind of paperwork showing me that you know how to not die? And that's the purpose of the skydiving license. It's true, it's not technically needed, but if you want to find someone to take you up in an airplane and let you jump out of it, they're going to want to see a license, rightly, because it carries a lot of legal responsibility for them. But it's completely non-governmental. It's a non-governmental agency that does this. I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but it's also really easy to get. You only have to have 25 jumps in order to be a Class A licensed skydiver. And 25 jumps
So wait, how do
is
you
not
get to
that many.
25 jumps if you don't have the license?
Generally, you would go through a class to get your first 10 or so, and then after that, your next 15 to 20 jumps, however many it takes to get you to 25, are monitored by instructors, and they count the jump or not based on whether or not you are successful in doing the things they want you to do. Like they may request that you...
Okay, if you survive...
Well, it's a little more complicated
you pass.
than
If
that.
you don't survive, you fail.
But like on my last one, they said, okay, when you're at 6,500 feet, we want you to wave your hands like this. And when I did that thing, they marked down, yes, successful skydive, because they want to know that you can maintain presence of mind, that you can keep track of where you're at, what's happening around you, because there's a lot of stuff happening at once when you're skydiving. Your adrenaline's going crazy. You're falling to the earth at like 110 miles per hour. It's cold. It's windy, and you have to focus on 1,000 things
all
at
right,
once.
So when they say you have to go like this, okay, are you with somebody else, or is this
You are on your first dive. Your
Okay.
first dive is always going to be a tandem dive where you're strapped to someone else. But your dives after that can be solo, but you're going to be in a plane with an instructor, and there's going to be an instructor down on the ground, and they're going to extensively have told you everything. And there's a fail-safe parachute that will open automatically at, I think, 3,000 feet.
Okay.
So there's a lot of safeguards there, but that's how you get your first 10 to 12 jumps. And after that, you can just pay to go up like normal and have an instructor there who will usually give you some task like that, or say, hey, I want you to do 3 flips or whatever, to just make sure that you're able to maintain your composure as you're falling, and that you're able to do the things that you need to do in order to not die. Anyway, all of that said, our goal is to have a Liberty dive team, and I think that would be really cool. So,
That would be.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we just lost Sarah from New Mexico, and I didn't even mean to get into all of that, but we did lose her, so it's not really a great loss. There's not much more to say about RFK, but a lot of what Trump is doing, I have to admit, I find it fascinating. The prospects here for cryptocurrency look really, really good. I think the next few years, now I don't know what the result of all of this is going to be. Maybe Donald Trump just completely destroys the United States as we know it. I don't know. But I suspect the first 2 years, at least the next 2 years, are going to be really good years for cryptocurrency. And I would suggest, this is not advice, but I think it's probably a good idea for people to buy $100 worth of Dogecoin.
Yeah. You know what's interesting too is that there's going to be hardship coming under Trump, I think.
There will be.
Because of the tariffs that he's talking about implementing, which is likely to increase the cost of living probably by like another 13 to 26%.
Yeah.
So that could also be another good reason to buy crypto.
Yeah, the tariff thing is not going to be pleasant for a lot of people. A lot of the things that Donald Trump wants to do aren't going to be very pleasant. Like, he wants to, the person he's heading in charge of the military or whatever is one of these people who doesn't think that, he wants to get the woke out of the military. He wants only straight men to be able to serve in the military. And a lot of my coworkers were like, this is awful. How can he do this? But I'm like, yeah, clapping. Go Trump, man. Limit the amount of people who can serve in the military to the smallest number of people possible. I'm all for this. You mean only straight white dudes get to go die for the military industrial complex?
That was one of the benefits of being gay. I always thought, like, wait, I don't have to go to the military.
Yeah, like this is...
They won't let me in? That's great.
This is a good thing for people who aren't like straight white men. And now, obviously, the guy hasn't said anything. He's a former Fox News analyst, too. So he's not like super qualified for this. But that's who Trump has picked. I think it's a good thing. I was happy when Trump said, no trans people in the military. Thank you, dude. Hell yeah. You're not making trans people go die for oil companies? I'm totally on board with this. And to me, it's like they're shooting themselves in the foot. It's the opposite of what you would expect. If they truly believe that the straight white men are the pinnacle of civilization, then those would be the ones that they would want to protect, right? Shouldn't they be sending all of the gay women out into the military to fight to preserve the order for these straight white men? Instead, it's the other way around, where all they want to send are straight dudes out into the military. And this is something I noticed when I played the game Angry Goy 2, which it's a Nazi supremacist, it's a white power game made by Nazis, and Chris Cantwell is one of the characters that you can be in this video game. It's a stupid video game. I streamed it on Twitch to make fun of it. It's a terrible video game. It's not even fun. But you just mow down wave after wave of white dudes. And like, if your motive here, if you believe that the white male is worth saving, the white male is the pinnacle of civilization, then how do you make a game where literally all you do is kill a bunch of white dudes? And that's all the game is. Like, the only enemies that you ever see are white dudes that you have to kill. And that seems strange to me. If you believe that only white men should be in charge of things, then why are you sending only white men to die in the military? I would imagine that they would send everyone else. Regardless, I'm totally on board with this.
Yeah, I always thought that like we should be training everybody, right? Like I mean, there's these things called government schools that most people go to, right? Like there's an opportunity here to simply train everybody starting in like first grade.
Train what?
Everybody, like military, like basic military kind of stuff.
You want
like to
schools,
shoot guns.
You want schools training people to?
I'm not saying I want it. I'm saying like, to me, it would make a lot of sense to train everybody. Like if you're going to, obviously you're going to have a military. So like you might as well just train everybody.
Well, not obviously.
Like, I mean, I'm not saying
like some
mandate
nations
it,
don't have don't have a military and they do just fine.
Yeah,
you don't go around starting problems.
I don't disagree with that. I just like, it just seems to me like it's always made a lot of sense to just train if you're already going to be mandating stuff, you're already okay with violence. So you might as well, like logically, it seems just the next step is just train everybody, you know?
I don't know, man. I'd rather them train no one. But if they're going to train people to be killers and to be killed, I'm okay with it not being trans people. I'm okay with it not being gay people and not being women. I would rather no one die in service to the American empire, to be clear.
Right. Like, and I would agree with that too. I just think like from a training perspective, like this, like they make a distinction between male and female as far as training concerned. They make a distinction between age. Sometimes it's 16, sometimes it's 18. But like if you're actually in a situation where somebody's attacking us, like, I would think you would want your kids to be armed. You would want everybody, to be able to defend themselves.
Yeah,
not
but
just the men.
In like the 200 plus years of American history, there's really like only once been an occasion where, quote, they were attacking us. And that was Pearl Harbor.
Well, I mean, I think our history is way more complicated than that in terms of like, there were people here before us, and if we're talking about white versus like
we're talking about the United States here.
Yeah,
right. We're not talking about white people
but like
in North America.
The United States independence.
And there's a huge difference between a parent instructing their children on how to use firearms than their school being like, okay, it's military training day. Those are two very different things.
Yeah, and I don't think I would definitely not advocate for mandating it or anything like that.
I absolutely do not want schools instructing people in military operations. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the government should be involved in education at all. But I think, like, logically, to the extent that somebody is okay with like government education, you would think that they would want schools to be like training, everybody who goes through the program, or as many of them as possible. In something that's essential, or at least that people who are pro-war or pro-military would consider to be essential.
So Trump has tapped Senator Marco Rubio as his nominee for Secretary of State. Now, this is the role that I believe Hillary Clinton performed during the Obama administration. I don't know exactly what Marco Rubio will be doing, but they do have a link here to Rubio's foreign policy views, which I suspect are not good. I suspect he's a war hawk, as many people are, especially Republicans. I'm surprised to see he got a mainstream person like Marco Rubio to do this. Obviously, RFK is going to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Apparently, he has some quote here on raw milk. I would really like to know what his take on raw milk is, because like raw milk is totally fine. It's the government that stands in the way of it. And like here in New England, you can find people to sell you raw milk very easily. Matt Gaetz is going to serve as the Attorney General. Gaetz resigned from Congress days before an ethics investigation about him was due, and apparently he's being accused of a lot of sexual assault. He looks evil when you look at pictures of Matt Gaetz. Doesn't look like a guy that I would trust. Not too many of these are particularly interesting, though. Like Matt Gaetz, don't find that interesting. Marco Rubio, don't find that interesting. I do find his nomination of RFK to be interesting, and I find this one to be most interesting. Trump announced he is appointing Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president in 2020, I believe it was, to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, a new commission on cutting government spending and regulation. And Elon Musk is going to be heading it. And that's going to be interesting. I don't know if that's going to be good or bad, but it's going to be interesting. And apparently Pete Hegseth is the Fox News host that I mentioned, who is at least a veteran, apparently. He's the pick for Secretary of Defense. He said he would shake up the Pentagon, assailing the military as ineffective and woke. And, again, I'm fine with that. If they want to have their little military where only like straight dudes can serve in it, like more power to them. I don't want to serve in the military anyway, and I don't want to see my fellow trans people dying for the service of the American empire or for the service of oil companies or Halliburton or Lockheed Martin or insert multi-billion-dollar war machine corporation as you prefer. I would rather no one die for those causes. But if they're going to, I would rather it be people with as little in common to do with me as possible. And that would be the straight dudes, right? Like, I'm not a fan of the military-industrial complex, but if it's going to exist, I would rather it not send people like me to die for the military-industrial complex. It's going to be an interesting few years. Of course, none of this has actually happened. None of these people have been put in positions of power as of yet. And it's unclear if any of them ever actually will be. But I'm interested to see what's going to happen, especially in regard to Dogecoin, because it's not beyond comprehension that Elon Musk would try to make Dogecoin legal tender in the United States. It's not beyond the comprehension. Like, this dude regularly does things as though he has no understanding of the consequences of his actions, because he probably doesn't. He probably doesn't think that his actions have consequences. He regularly does things, fires people, goes on temper tantrums at his companies. And I mean, he bought Twitter more or less on a whim and ran it into the ground. From what we can tell, it's not making any money. It's losing money. And I don't have the information about it in front of me.
Was Twitter making money before?
No, it was always losing money.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but it's losing more money now. It made a lot of money from the government, interestingly enough, and from governments around the world. And that, which again is true of most of Elon Musk's companies. Hint, hint. Elon Musk is a corporatist. Another word for that, the word I prefer is fascist, but fascist is a really loaded term. He's basically a socialist, though.
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel like he's a socialist, that other socialists would disagree that he's a socialist, but he is really a socialist because he's doing the same thing that the socialists all do, which is, go grab money from government and act like, nobody's going to have to pay it back.
I mean, socialism and fascism seem to be pretty closely related. The only difference that I can see is that fascism pretends to build a wall between the government and the private sector, where like Twitter is a, quote, private company, but almost all of their money comes from the government, right? So instead of being
corporate welfare,
instead of being a social media platform like Weibo that is directly owned by the Chinese government, it's, quote, privately owned, and it just has its hands tightly woven with the federal government. So it pretends to not be part of the government, and it gives it some amount of leeway to say that it isn't, but in reality, it's working with the government to censor people who the government doesn't like. And we know that is true. We saw it during COVID-19 where I think it was the Department of Justice was telling Twitter, hey, shut this person down, block this account. They were doing the same thing on Facebook in regard to people who were spreading, quote, misinformation about vaccines and COVID-19. We know that these social media companies who are receiving money from the government were shutting people down, blocking people, and limiting their reach by the requests of various government agencies. So that's pretty much socialism as far as I can tell. But really, it's fascism or corporatism. It's corporations pretending to be private while they're actually part and parcel of the federal government.
Are they taking orders on behalf of the government?
Absolutely.
If they are, then...
They are. They were shutting down people exercising free speech in the name of government. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
Wire 47 plus nations going down and blockading what is called the South Pole.
Where did you hear this?
Look it up, mate.
Okay, I'm looking right now.
Do your research.
Well, no. See, when somebody calls in and makes a claim, they should be able to back that claim. So if you're telling me that's happening, then I'd like to see some sort of proof of that. Now, a quick Google search for South Pole blockade.
Oh, you trust Google, do you?
Okay, well, what search engine should I use? Where would I find information about this?
You can do WikiLeaks, Wikipedia, or WikiLeaks.
Okay, don't say the S word or else we're going to have to drop your call.
Dude, it's all over the news.
No, you can't say that on the radio.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Moscow has warned the United States that allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles to strike Russian territory will prompt a radical change in the conflict. It comes after reports the Biden administration is finally granting Kyiv's request to use US-made missiles to hit much deeper into Russia. Nick Harper reports.
The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
A show of support from outgoing US President Joe Biden. With just 2 months left in office, he's looking to surge military assistance ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House. Trump has vowed to end funding and the war itself. The Kremlin says the missile decision throws oil on the fire, escalates the conflict, and means Washington is now directly involved. Without confirming the policy change on long-range missiles, US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller pushed back at Monday's briefing.
When you look at escalation of this conflict, it has been Russia that has escalated the conflict time and time again. It's the aggressor here.
The change of policy comes as Moscow deploys tens of thousands of troops, including North Korean soldiers, to try and retake Kursk, the Russian region Ukraine captured in a surprise offensive this summer. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
A New York man is in custody following a fatal stabbing spree across Manhattan on Monday, which left 2 people dead and 1 injured. It's reported the attacks were unprovoked, but the attacker has been arrested multiple times before. Mitch McCann reports.
Police say at around 8:30 local time, a 51-year-old man stabbed a 36-year-old construction worker in the abdomen on West 19th Street. The man was rushed to Bellevue Hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after. 2 hours later, the attacker continued on and stabbed a 68-year-old Asian man on East 30th Street who was fishing by the East River. He too was rushed to hospital but did not survive. 30 minutes later, the assailant attacked a woman on 42nd Street and 1st Avenue near the United Nations headquarters. Police arrested the alleged attacker near the UN shortly after and say he is a resident of Bellevue Men's Shelter, and they added he has 8 prior arrests.
The US state of Texas's Education Board is voting on Monday on a controversial new public school curriculum that's infused with Bible stories and which critics say glosses over slavery in the US. Tony Waterman has more.
Supporters of the state-developed curriculum say the Bible stories have historical context and will teach students about morality. But critics say singling out one religion violates the separation of church and state and implies one religion is better than others. They also argue the text doesn't properly address slavery and racism. The lessons would be taught in kindergarten through 5th grade. Schools wouldn't be required to use the material, but if they did, they would receive a big boost in funding. Tony Waterman, Texas.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us. There's still time to get on the air with us. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, the number is 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And we've been talking here about a variety of things. In a lot of ways, cryptocurrency, the future, what the future may hold. It's a scary time for people. To me, it's not really scary. It's exhilarating. I'm interested to see what is going to come because I know that the vast majority of things that the government does don't really have any impact on my life. And I know I sound jaded when I say that. And a lot of people are like, well, that's because you're not an immigrant trying to come to the United States. And yeah, that's true. Immigration policy changes aren't going to affect me. But immigration policy isn't actually changing as we go from Biden to Donald Trump anyway. So like a lot of people make that argument, you live in an ivory tower then because this is going to affect you, but it's not.
I think what you mean is that it doesn't matter which person is in office, it's not going to impact you any differently. Because a lot of things do impact us, like tariffs and taxes and things.
Sure.
But they're both sides are doing it.
Right. Like you can't even use the bathroom in your house without government regulations being involved.
Right.
There's regulations on the toilet paper, on the septic tank, on the water purity, on the toilet, on the light bulbs that you're using to see, on the house that you're in. There's government regulations everywhere, and these have a real impact on your life. That's the reason that you don't have your own private flying car, is because of government regulations. Just realistically speaking, we've wanted flying cars since I was a kid, and like no one has invented it. You mean to tell me that it's impossible? No.
Is it an issue of invention or is it an issue of regulation?
I suspect it's an issue of regulation. There's so many regulatory hurdles. Can you imagine the steps it must take to try to get testing approved by the FAA?
Yeah, and it's probably like a risk thing. Like people they're so sensitive to risk. It's like if one person in a million dies, you can't have it.
Yep. And then there will be those people who are concerned, well, if you have a flying car, you could fly it into the 8th story in an apartment building and bring down the entire complex. You know, there's people who would be afraid of that sort of thing.
I mean, you can also drive your car into an apartment complex and kill people too.
Yes,
or
yes,
into
you
a
can.
crowd or, any other number of circumstances. And people actually do this on a regular basis already. It's not going to make a difference whether or not it's, a car or a flying car because
Right.
they're both small.
But it's not logic or reason that is persuading these people. It's fear.
Right.
They fear the possibilities, and therefore it's a no-sell.
Yep, it's FUD.
Yeah.
Fear, uncertainty, doubt, fear-mongering.
And they're waiting for some sort of permanent safeguard to ensure them that nothing like that could ever happen before they would ever even fathom the possibility of us having flying cars. I want my flying car. I want my hoverboard that Back to the Future promised me.
Yep.
And I want my flying car that the Jetsons promised me. It's 2024. Do you mean to tell me I still don't have a flying car? Why? The technology's there. We know how to make things fly. For more than a century, we've known how to make things fly. Why don't we have cars that fly? And the answer is government regulations being propelled by people's fears of safety and security.
And the funny thing is we actually have this technology already. They're called drones.
Yeah, very true.
They just need to be a little bit larger.
They would need to be a little bit larger, but no bigger than an average car.
Yep.
And a drone the size of an average car could easily take a person from one part of the city to another. It wouldn't get great gas mileage, but it probably also wouldn't use gasoline.
It's probably distance that would be, you wouldn't be able to go very far with it, but you could get across town with it probably.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't get the distance of an automobile, but it wouldn't use a gasoline engine, I don't think. I think it would. We probably would have invented something better by now, if not for government subsidies to the oil industry and to auto manufacturers using gas engines.
It's interesting because they do use gas engines on drones, especially the larger ones too. So I don't know. It's an interesting one though. Yeah.
I suspect there's better alternatives out there, and that if we were free of government regulation, we would come up with them.
Yeah, I've seen ones with batteries, and I think I've seen ones with gas engines too. So I don't know if one is, I don't know where, like, how they compete as far as how far you can go and other factors. But
I've also seen several news items in the last few months, really, about people with small-sized nuclear reactors that are capable of powering entire neighborhoods.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to fly in a nuclear reactor-powered drone, but
I would, because I recognize that most of the fear surrounding nuclear energy is exactly FUD as well.
Yeah, I just don't know if the crashing nuclear-powered drone... Something tells me that's probably not a good idea still.
Well, maybe not, but I tend to think it would be just as safe, if not safer, than gasoline. But I'm no expert on nuclear energy.
They have sent, I believe, I think there are nuclear-powered rockets or nuclear-powered...
Well, there's a lot of nuclear-powered stuff these days.
Yeah.
Like the aircraft carriers are nuclear-powered. Most of the rockets burn hydrogen, but hydrogen fuel cells are a form of nuclear power.
I think they're powering some of the satellites based on nuclear technologies.
Oh, I'm sure. Nuclear power is everywhere and it's very common.
Yeah, even though but
there's so much FUD around it that we don't see it everywhere.
I don't know. Like this is one of these things where it's like, the nuclear stuff is like, it does potentially have a risk associated with it, but
everything does.
It does, but it has a lot of risk potentially associated with it. But
that's FUD. It doesn't have any more risk than any other form of energy. In fact, it's proven to be safer than most forms of energy.
It's because of how it's deployed and the safety aspects that are surrounding it, probably though.
That's true of everything. Yeah. If you walk into a room of people with a loaded AK-47 and start pulling the trigger, you can't really blame the gun for that and say it's an unsafe design.
The risk is potentially greater than somebody walking into a room and killing a bunch of people with a gun.
Not really. The designs of nuclear reactors has mitigated almost all of those possibilities. Like you're not gonna you're not gonna turn your neighborhood nuclear reactor into a nuclear bomb and take out the entire city. It's just it's not gonna be possible.
I follow you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But let's go to the phones to someone who undoubtedly hates nuclear energy. Yes, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yes, I was told that the appointees was that his industry was a fracking industry.
Yeah, Sarah, do you hate nuclear energy?
I think...
You think?
It's a dirty energy from what I gather. I learned about the fusion and the fission. Fission is when you split an atom and it releases energy, and the fusion is when the atoms collect, when they bond together, it creates energy. So I don't like,
I think that's the most impressive thing I've ever heard from you, Sarah.
Well, I mean, I did took like a pre-chemistry or something, and I learned that much about it. Yeah, like an introductory chemistry class. I remember the periodic tables, and I remember oxidizing a copper and it turned green. And so I learned a little bit and then about the hydrogen cars. Like when you split a water molecule, it releases electricity and 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, right?
Yep, that's how hydrogen batteries work.
That's right. That's the hydrogen cars.
Yeah, I'm impressed, Sarah.
Yeah, super impressed.
So, but do you like or dislike nuclear energy? I realize you're talking about...
I said no.
Yeah.
It sounds really dirty. Didn't they blow up the Chernobyl where Ukraine used to be? That part was part of Ukraine now. It used to be Russia, but they had a big leak or something. It's Chernobyl. And that was a nuclear reactor. Chernobyl.
Yeah, Chernobyl.
Yeah, that did happen.
Chernobyl.
That was largely due to mismanagement by the USSR and not the USSR not being willing to give the money to its satellite countries that it actually needed to be giving them in order to maintain the facilities that the USSR had built. And
I thought it was an accident.
The epitome of
it was an accident,
reactor.
but it could have been prevented. But they didn't have the money to do some of the repairs. They didn't have the money to have some of the staff they needed.
That's interesting because I thought it was okay. So it was a combination of somebody giving it an order to do something stupid in addition to not maintaining it. Because my understanding was it was somebody ordered them to do some sort of test.
There were many stupid decisions that were made.
Okay,
certainly.
But I was talking about the danger. Okay, Trump got elected. Everybody's all happy. People ran out and voted for him. But his appointment, okay, then look at his appointment. It's going to be a fracking. His industry was a fracking guy. It's going to be appointed to the environmental energy department. He's
Environmental
energy
department.
Right, he's going to head the energy and that department, and he says, "Well, there's no
Do you just mean the
global
department?
warming. What pollution? Department of Energy, and
I see.
That's what he's going to head."
Let me clarify for people real quick, Sarah. There is an Office of Environmental Management that belongs.
That's what.
Yes, let me clarify for people. Sarah means chill out for a second while I clarify for people. There is an Office of Environmental Management that is part of the Department of Energy. So you're saying this guy, this pro-fracking guy, is going to be.
Yeah.
He's going to be heading up the Office of Environmental Management.
I think so. I mean, he's got like a bunch of cabinets that he could appoint, but that's his pick. He's a climate denier. It's like, what pollution? We don't have pollution. We don't have global warming. I want to frack all I want. I want to let everybody drill, baby drill, and frack, because he's going to be appointed. He's going to be put there. So I hope,
Now, is this person you're talking about Chris Wright?
It sounds like he's a really white-looking guy. Yeah, he looks like a white guy.
I suspect most of the people that Trump picks are gonna look like white guys, Sarah. So you're gonna have to be more specific than, well, it's a white man.
Yeah, it's a white man with a short haircut. And he looks like an engineer. How about that? Does he look like
what
that?
What does an engineer look like? Like a fat guy, like a fat white guy or something?
White man with a short haircut is not descriptive enough, Sarah. This is the Trump administration.
But
almost everyone they pick is going to be a white man with short hair.
Well, the thing is, did you know that Trump brought out the men voters, the young men voters that they don't even care to vote. You know what? I think what brought him out.
Do you know this person's name?
Women. I don't know what his name is, but I saw a picture of him.
But you're upset about it.
Well, the thing is, I'm also describing it's the men were so afraid that Kamala, a minority woman, could be in such a super, like the most powerful woman in the whole wide world. They're so terrified, and they ran out and they did that what you call a bullet voter.
Oh, I see.
They only know one thing.
It was Michael Kressner. That's who you're talking about, Sarah. I see it here in front of me.
Did you dug him out on the internet? Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
does that
he's
sound
white,
right?
Skinny guy.
Michael Kressner. Does that sound like the guy you're talking about?
Smart.
Does that sound like the guy you're talking about?
I think so.
Yeah, because it's a name I just made up. I'm still looking at the picture of Chris right here. I wondered what would happen if I threw a random name at you, and you didn't really disappoint, Sarah. Like, I get that you're upset about this, but you don't seem to know what you're upset about. You're very unfocused in your dismay right now. You don't know the name of the person. You don't know the name of the person who is upsetting you. You don't know what they're doing that is upsetting you. You don't know what department they're going to be leading. You just know that you're upset about it. And that's fine, right? But you need to take control of that, assess the facts, and come up with a solution.
Well, the solution is we made a big mistake for having Trump in office. We're going to suffer worse.
That's not a solution. That's you freaking out in an undirected. That's you just freaking out and not knowing any of the facts again.
Stop blaming me for Trump being in office. I didn't vote for him.
So who did you vote for?
I think it was the libertarian libertarian candidate for president.
Chase Oliver.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know, but Kamala still won your state. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. So we winded up with him, and the danger is that we get all these crazy people that get pointed to all these
Sarah, crazy people,
and they're sex offenders. I mean, and they slept with a 17-year-old.
Who is they? Who is they, Sarah?
Well, the people that he picked out. You know, all these people that he appoints are like, one of them was raped a woman.
I
and
am
then she had
so
to pay her
worried
off.
about your mental state right now, Sarah, and I mean this sincerely, right? You don't know the facts of what you're talking about. You're just upset about the people that Trump has picked. You don't know their names. You don't know anything about them. You've heard some talking points like this person has been accused of sexual assault, that person has been accused of this, but you're just reacting blindly, emotionally, almost like a child whose toy has been taken away from them. You're just lashing out and you're angry. You don't know why. You need to calm down, right? And assess yourself and assess the facts.
You're calm. You don't care, but
I care immensely. I care immensely, Sarah. I really do. I care about the state of the world. That's why I do this show, because I care about what's happening in the world around me. But freaking out and having this panic attack where you don't know why you're upset. You don't know what person you're upset about. You don't know what that person wants to do. All you know is some vague concept of this person, this unknown person whose name I don't know and who may or may not be a white dude with short hair has been accused of sexual assault, and this upsets you. And that's all you have to go on. And that right now is the foundation of everything you've been saying since you called into the show tonight. And that's not a good foundation for you to base your worldview and your actions off of, Sarah.
Well, do you think that we're better off with Trump? I think we're better off with Kamala. It would have been a less of this craziness going on with all this tax breaks to the wealthy, giving a $1 billion contract to the Elon.
Harris is crazy too. She wants to take away even more of our rights, just different rights.
Well, I don't know. It's a different matter of opinion. You guys don't see much difference, but I do. Like they're going to make the people go to work to get EBT. How about that? Do you think that's going to go with our state?
Well, can we just get rid of the EBT?
Well, you want people to starve. Well, in our state,
I don't want people to starve. I want them to get what they work for.
Well, you like that policy. You want them to work. What if they're drug addicts?
Aren't you a socialist,
They don't even know what time it is.
Aren't
you think they could work 20 hours a week?
Aria, Sarah, so I don't want these people to get EBT cards and money from my pocket, and I don't want the corporate, welfare, system to exist either. I don't want the government bureaucrat to get my money either. And I don't want him to get, I'd rather you not give him your money voluntarily either. But hey, if you want to do that, that's fine with me. As long as, it doesn't impact, everybody else.
That's right. Elon Musk is it's like he bought people's votes. That lottery, he picked a certain people that if you voted in Pennsylvania,
didn't the lottery never actually happen though?
Well, wasn't people winning like $1 million a year? But he invested like $300 million for his campaign. Trump turns around and makes sure that he gets a $1 billion contract with the government, and he appoints him one of his cabinets.
There's a lot of back scratching going on.
This is politics. This is an equal opportunity situation. The Democrats could have done the same thing, and to a large degree, they have.
Yeah, but you know what? He's being scrutinized and he's being magnified, and I don't know about
Sarah. Please calm down. Get control of yourself, right? Like, I want to stress again that you're just wildly reacting to things without knowing the names of the people involved, the agencies involved, what their plans actually are. You're collecting bits and pieces that agitate you, and you're just reacting to them, right? You're seeing a thing and you're lashing out. You're being emotional, and I don't say this because you're a woman. I say this because you're being emotional. And you need to stop that, right? You need to assess things factually, rationally. And to do that, you have to first set aside your emotional reaction, right? These news articles that you're seeing about the 17-year-old rape, the allegation and the fracking guy, whatever, all of those things are designed to get exactly this emotional reaction out of you, because then you are an advertising machine for them, right? They make money off of your panic, and that's always been the way that the media has functioned. But it's not a good way to live, Sarah. If you want to persuade people, you can't just call a nationally syndicated radio show and lash out emotionally and freak out at everyone, which you basically just did for the last 10 minutes. Calm down. Why are you upset? You don't know the name of this guy. I made up a random name and said it to you, and you were like, yeah, that sounds like him. Your description of him is a white man with short hair. That could be literally anyone. Not literally anyone, but that could be like half of the American population. And he looks like an engineer, whatever that means. Sarah, please calm down, collect yourself, and try to stop panicking. It's gonna be okay, but you gotta take a deep breath and calm down and learn the facts about the things that people are saying to try to upset you. Don't get upset about it. Say, oh, well, I don't agree with that, and that could lead to some problems, and then consider what problems it might lead to and how you might address those problems or prevent those problems from occurring. But freaking out and posting on Twitter or Facebook or Free Talk Live, doing nothing to make the situation better. So calm down, please, Sarah and everyone else out there. Just please calm down, stop freaking out, collect yourselves, and proceed as rational thinking adults can. Speaking of rational adults, David, you're with us here on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, tech stuff, but you were talking about flying. First of all, skydiving. I've jumped out of airplanes, but it's even a cooler, weirder feeling than jumping out of the airplane. I used to also fly jumpers. I would be the pilot, take them up, and it's a really strange feeling when you got a whole bunch of skydivers in the back of your airplane, and they're usually talking pretty loud and having a good time, and and you're going up for 20, 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden, doom, 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 they're out the door, and the airplane is silent. There's nobody there. You're all alone. It's the weirdest feeling.
I bet that is a weird feeling.
Yeah.
I've never been particularly inclined to get my pilot's license. I considered it at one point, but I don't know. Experiencing that kind of makes me curious about it. That does sound like an interesting experience in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, this is pretty weird. You got a party going on in your airplane, and then in the space, in a 10-second period of time, they're all gone. So then you can look down and see them falling away.
How do you feel about losing your passengers?
Oh, dude, it's nice to have peace and quiet back.
So what's on your mind tonight, David?
Well, another thing with the flying, we already have flying cars, and commercial air taxis are being deployed for the first time in the world. They're already being tested. If you look online, there's dozens of them. But in Dubai, UAE, next year, 2025, they begin commercial air taxi service, flying cars.
Now, that's with a pilot, correct?
Well, either way, most of them will probably be completely autonomous so that they don't have to have the expense of a pilot and take a yeah.
I know, but I believe the FCC approved something in relation to air taxis, but with a pilot, if I'm not mistaken, recently. But I'm not 100% sure on the details. Probably, yeah. You can do them either way, with or without a human pilot. And the FAA has made all their regulations necessary. So when they give the word, which will be probably 2026, 2027, 2028 at the latest, you'll have them here in the U.S. Starting in Miami, New York, L.A., Chicago.
Well, that'll be awesome. Thank you so much for the call tonight, David. Sorry you didn't get a lot of time. I just had to attempt to reach Sarah and get her to calm down a little bit. I really hope I was successful, but I sincerely doubt that I was. But that's an important thing for everyone to do, is to just calm down, take a deep breath, relax. It's going to be okay. It's Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real